need more hours by people, I look at that and I accept that, but I also say we may have a process that we need to look at before we increase human resources. Let's make sure our process for teaching our students is valid and that we're utilizing the tools we have, the process. Is it aligned with our principles that's laid out in our application? And so there's more to it than just adding more people.
I'd like to give an example of a teacher who only teaches because it's part-time. Representative Brad Last's wife, Jan, teaches at a highly impacted kindergarten. She has the hardest to teach kindergarten students in Hurricane, Utah. And as I've worked with her on tools that help to intervene with these kids, for example, there are some tools that help kids make up for the fact that they didn't get the 30 million words that other kids get to wire their brains for the work of kindergarten and learning. And so she has used these kinds of tools, but because of the nature of the students she has, she prefers to work part-time rather than full-time. She loves her work, but if she were required to teach full-time, I don't know that she would.
Thank you, Chair. Is it okay if I ask a follow-up question?
Go ahead.
Tell me what your starting teacher salaries are going to be in a full-time FTE. Have you considered that?
The average salary is $48,000. I believe a year ago that was at $41,000. We feel like with a teacher shortage, that's a very attractive salary. Also, an attractive benefits package with some 401k matching. We feel like that's appropriate. We also know that in Weber County, the lane one with a new bachelor's degree is 40 to 60, depending on the steps. So we feel like 48 is very competitive. We know some will be well below that, but we want to also compensate for experience, where that experience is also aligned with our mission.
So you said your average salary is 48.
48.
What's your starting salary?
Starting salary would be the low 40s. 41,
Low 40s.
42 is about where Weber County is, but we'd want to be aligned with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Bassett.
So I understand that in the long term you'll be meeting about 8 times a year. I wonder, how often do you plan to meet in the pre-operational this span of time and also in those early operational years?
Frequently. Well, yeah, frequently. If the last few months are any indication, as often as needed. I mean, I've done startup charter, not from this level. I stepped in after the charter was approved. It's a huge undertaking. I understand that. We all understand. We've talked at great length about it. This is a big commitment. There's lots of trainings that you have to go to. Rebecca has endless sheets of timelines you have to meet. 8, only 8 sheets. There's not one of us that doesn't understand this is a huge commitment that we're taking on, but we all have the passion for it. I mean, even Matt, who teaches at the university level, understands, even at the university level, how important this personalized instruction is, having kids taking ownership for their learning. So we're all willing to, I'm not speaking just for me, I'm speaking for all of us, committed.
We're in for the long haul.
Follow-up. Speaking of long haul, I noticed that it looks like board members can be lifetime members. Why not put a limit on the number of terms for that board?
Personally, I'm working with some boards that have members who have been on their board since the beginning of their charter started, and 10 years is, you know, they're doing great work. We just opted not to have terms. I don't think it's because we're completely opposed to term limits, but if we're doing good work and our school's doing great stuff and we're all willing to continue to put in the energy and the effort, I don't think we thought that we needed to only serve 3 years and then step down, or serve 3 years with 2 terms and step down.
Thank you. One more follow-up. Yeah. The bylaws state that the school desires 5 to 7 members, and here, right now, we only have 5. So I'm wondering, why do we not have that highest number of members when maybe the work is at the heaviest at this?
We might
Five is a
not be
good
big in
number.
numbers, but we're high in quality and passion and excitement.
It is so much easier to get 5 people together at the same time. We all have you guys have busy schedules. You know how hard it is for everyone to come together. So we'll be working on lots of committees. I mean, Carrie and I may be the curriculum committee, and Howard and Matt, the building committee. So if we find that we need to bring in 2 members and we're looking for specific skills, this isn't just bringing 2 people on. I mean, if we find we're lacking in an area, certainly we would look for a board member with a specific skill set. The numbers themselves didn't matter. It was the skill set that we had.
And the common vision is really important. We don't want to just get somebody to fill out the 7 slots. We want to make sure that they can be vision keepers to keep the vision pure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow-up?
Thank you. Are you done? Okay.
Thank you for articulating that for me.
I have one more follow-up.
No.
Member Smith has a follow-up.
A quick follow-up on the board. So you guys seem like you're amazing people. You have the vision, you have the fire, you have the passion. You're working well together. It's clicking. That's all great. What happens if someone loses it? How do you handle a board member who is not as engaged as you would need? You know, if you don't, do you have an effective mechanism to replace someone, especially in the case of that person perhaps not wishing to be replaced?
A 2/3 majority, according to our bylaws, but I find Rockstar is very effective at getting people energized. But our bylaws do have a 2/3 majority, so if they feel I'm not pulling my weight, they could certainly vote me off the island and bring in somebody else.
2/3 vote to remove a board member.
I think so.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So can you explain to me maybe your parent component to your charter, how that works and the parent buy-in element with this type of a vision?
So like most charters, we have suggested 30 hours of volunteer, right? You want parents engaged in the school as much as possible. That would be done through the director and the teacher and the PTO and however they figure out they get the parent involvement. But when it comes to the personalized learning plan, the child works with an advisor to create a personalized learning plan, and then quarterly the parent and the advisor and the child sit down. But the parent always has digital access to that personalized learning plan. So when the teacher and the advisor meet and update the progress on that plan, the parent has digital access to that. And then there's also parent-teacher conferences with the classroom teachers, which is separate from conferences regarding the personalized learning plan. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, partially. I just didn't know what the volunteer element to that looked like.
Yeah, it's 30, and it's based on the needs of the school and based on what teachers need and
Okay.
washing windows. I've had parents wash lunchroom tables, wash windows, hold up a stop sign in the parking lot, anything they can do to help this school and are willing to do.
You already answered this a little bit. The personalized learning model, you talked about how you may differ from other models. I liked your L-shaped drawing. That was nice. What if you get into a situation where you feel like it isn't going how you thought? Maybe there is some chaos in transition. Maybe there is some chaos in keeping students engaged and keeping them on task. How do you do to remedy that? What are you going to do if you realize that sometimes things work on paper that don't work in reality?
Well, and we talked about that. Even the schedule, I mean, we have schedules. We've done all of this legwork that really the director will be the one who makes those decisions. And we've talked about, this is great. We have this 3rd grade classroom. It looks beautiful. This is where we think the tables will go. It may be that we find that those learning stations need to be sequestered from what's going on, because that's where the noise level is going to be. And those sliding partition doors that they kind of use at
Some schools.
So, I was going to say stake centers, but that's probably wrong. Anyhow, those sliding partition doors, I don't know what you call those.
I think.
Oh yes, there's one here.
I think part of the question had to do with the shifting of culture and expectations in a personalized learning model. And I know that Superintendent Rick Robbins at Juab District, who heads one of the League of Innovative Schools, they've been invited to participate in that because of their shift to competency-based learning. But as I've met with him multiple times, it's very clear that this is not easy to change parents' expectations, students' expectations. In fact, his own daughter, and he says I have permission to tell this story, who is a great basketball athlete and wanted to attend a good school, was the first to complain as a freshman when they started to make this shift that, Dad, I'm a straight A student, and now I'm not anymore because of you. You changed it. And what he says is that she had learned to be a teacher pleaser. She had perfect attendance, never tardy, did all the extra credit work, and yet was not necessarily competent in the subject matter, but she was getting straight A's because she was filling the rules of the old model. And when she graduated and got a scholarship and is playing basketball now, she thanks her dad for sticking with it, saying, I'm a better person today, I'm more competent today than I was before. And changing a district is hard because you have the culture that already exists. We have the ability to start fresh. But still, there's expectations about sage on the stage. I know how to teach. You can't tell me how to teach because I already know. We're going to be careful in our hiring to make sure that teachers are willing to accept the paradigm shift, to accept the fact that we are repurposing the role of a teacher from what they may be used to. And that's why we may attract a lot of first-year teachers, because they will not have had the habits that are part of that. And I hope that we'll be able to lean on Board Member Bassett to help us know about personalized learning and to know what it looks like on the ground in Juab District as they have worked to make this shift.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Teresa.
I've been thinking about your teachers, and it seems like in this kind of model, it's a special kind of teacher that can teach like this, because as they go through higher ed, they do their work in the schools, and this is going to be way different than that. And I just wonder, are you concerned at all about finding those teachers that will be able to work in this kind of situation? And if it is the new teacher, a lot of training, how does that fit into what you're doing?
Well, Howard, I think it's important in that model there, they don't allow first-year teachers.
No, the first-year teacher can never develop a lesson plan in Shanghai, in Finland, in any of these countries. They don't expect that. Your job is to learn how to deliver proven lesson plans effectively, how to use personalized learning tools effectively. And so we want teachers who are eager to be learners, not teachers who think they know how to do it. Because unless you're already getting 90% of your kids at grade level every academic year, we're just asking you to accept that maybe there's a different way, maybe there's a better way. The other thing that they've taught here is that in Shanghai, when I visited their schools, those teachers only taught for 3 hours a day. They taught 50 fourth graders geometry in front of us, and they were all energized and learning well. But the rest of the day, that's why I'm so excited about these 15 hours a week. That is so exciting for me to think that teachers can hone their skills and look at the data and develop strategies. And the other thing they found is that in America, teaching tends to be a solitary process. You're given your classroom, you close the door, and good luck. Whereas in these countries, teaching is a public process. And if you were to look at this schematic of this classroom, you'll see that multiple teachers are involved, that they are helping each other. And we hope to have the kind of technology that will allow them to have 24/7 videotaping of their classroom so that they can look at behavioral issues. They can look at, they can click a a button on their teardrop microphone of an area they want to get some critique on. What happened here in my presentation? It's a public process in these high-ranking countries, and that's what we're looking for.
We also have a professional learning specialist and an instructional curriculum specialist. Professional learning specialist is there to deliver needs-based professional development. So we do micro-teaching where you're videoing a teacher when they're giving a lesson, and then teacher watches that and reflects on what they're doing. So I think the professional learning component for teachers is going to be immense because this is not what they get in a teacher prep program, such as what you said. Right. But one of your questions was, how are you going to get people that think this is great? Carrie and I were just at the OER, the Open Education Resource Summit yesterday. There were many teachers there that said they love the idea that you can find curriculum and design something specifically for a student or a small group of students' needs, but their complaint was, I don't have the time to do that. It's much easier to stand up with a basal, I'm going to teach wonders, we're all doing the same thing because they don't have the time. We deliberately built the time in because you need that. In order to create data-informed instruction, you have to have the time to do that. In order to hone your professional or your teaching skills, you have to have time to get professional development. And I'm not talking from 3:15 to 4 o'clock on Wednesdays after school. This is built in throughout their day.
So let me just, it shows that, 84 kindergartners. So is that 2 licensed teachers for three for the 84?
Yeah, we're roughly 27, 28 kids per class.
Per class.
You have a licensed teacher and a paraprofessional for every classroom.
And then these other people that you talked about, the
teacher specialists.
And they will be licensed teachers?
They're licensed teachers.
Okay.
Yeah, you might have a paraprofessional that's helping do keyboarding or something like that, but for you're teaching those core subjects, those are licensed, part-time licensed teachers doing whole group instruction based on a master schedule. So, and a counselor who's teaching goal setting and study skills. That's, according to Hattie, one of the key researchers, that's one of the #1 ways to get student achieving is through goal setting and study skills. So that's built right in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Phillips.
I have a few questions, if that's all right. 1 on script and 2 off. So the first is, and in some ways you've answered this, at least part of this, when you relay numbers of enrolled students in nearby schools, charter schools, and others. Have you done any surveys, or I've seen the marketing analysis, of course, but have you done surveys in your community or anything else that would indicate that there is a group of parents interested in this model in the area in which you are proposing to establish yourselves? And I'd love to hear what that is, so I'll stop on that question first.
Before we even did the proposal, we did a Facebook poll. Actually, it was after, I think, our last rejection, and we went through the feedback, is when we thought, do we really want to pursue this? And we did a Facebook poll in the area, and 87% of the respondents said, absolutely, give us a choice, because we're talking a community of almost 40,000 people with no school choice. You have a tiny little community like Clinton that has 20,000 people. They've got a fully functioning charter school. West Haven has about 12,000 people. They have a charter school. Riverdale has 9,000 people. They have 2 charter schools. This is 40,000 people. It's a pretty big area and growing with no choice.
How many people total responded?
Maybe 200 or
Lonnie, you also went to the city council and mayor as well.
Oh, I did contact the city council and the mayor. They didn't say, woohoo! They said, oh, great, thank you for letting us know. But, I mean, I grew up in the community. My siblings lived there. My parents lived there. I ran for state house twice and lost there. I've felt like, and last year I taught right there in the community in municipal. I feel I have a pretty good pulse of of the needs of the community, and this is a need.
And we're reaching out to Crystal Bassett at Weber District to I'm sorry. Gina Butters.
You've moved, Crystal.
Surprise! New job.
Gina Butters is the person who has been over the Roy area, and we want to make sure that we are complementary to what they're doing and not competitive.
Okay, thank you so much. That's very helpful. My two other questions are related. I'll ask them together, and then you can respond to them as you will. First of all, is there a common foundational Tier 1 curriculum in English Language Arts and Math? You've discussed the delivery and the nature of, for instance, the adaptability and so on, but have you chosen curricula related to those subjects, those core subjects, number one? And number two, for lack of maybe a better term, I'll just use the term, professional learning communities, but as your teachers engage in these, are you anticipating that one of the outcomes from these collaborations would be a sort of a vertical and horizontal alignment related to whatever curriculum that you're choosing? So.
Carrie.
Yes. Okay, so at Bridge, we understand that we need flexibility. We will have a rigorous process in place of selecting curriculum. We haven't chosen any yet. We believe that, we need to allow the director to make that decision, but we also know that new curriculum could be coming up, and we need to be open-minded, and we will have a rubric in place, though, where we will evaluate curriculum to ensure that research-based resources are being used in our schools. I think Lonnie mentioned there's not going to be a BASIL that we use for all the students. Our Tier 1 instruction will be using the state standards. So maybe your classroom is working on double-digit addition for the day with regrouping. In the small group setting, your teacher could be working with one group who is just doing amazing, and they're working on 4-digit addition with regrouping. And then another group could be doing the double-digit addition with manipulatives. So it's based on their needs. The center activities will also be focused on those standards as well. We realize that personalized learning is not a one-size-fits-all model.
She wanted to know about the group, the vertical and
yes.
teaming.
So our wonderful teachers are going to be able to meet with their grade level teams weekly, and they're going to also meet with their subject content level teachers weekly as well to discuss student needs.
So that would be the vertical teaming and then the horizontal teaming. On the schedule that we created, again, the director would probably be the one creating this. We have them meeting twice weekly for grade level PLC and twice weekly for vertical PLCs.
First of all, thank you for both of those answers, and I do want to say that it's actually reassuring to hear you talk about a direction and a vision related to curriculum, but to acknowledge that an administrator and perhaps even an administrative team would probably be the ones best initiating that when your role is governance. So thank you.
Thank you. Member Smith.
Your break-even budget is about 80% of max enrollment. What if you have 60% of max enrollment, and what do you do then?
Good, really good question. Yeah, at 72%, we're at 424 students, but if you drop below that and we get down into the low 300s, that's still a sizable number of students. So you still have to allocate fixed costs because you have to feed them lunch. You have to have teachers, you have to have administration. So there are some things that you have to spend money on, but there are many areas that are variable based on enrollment. So if you drop down into the low 300s, you're now looking at 2 classes per grade, perhaps, which means we now eliminate 7 to 9 teachers, depending on, and that's a large variable cost. So you can adjust the budget, but there's something else here. There's the top side too, that there's a quick reaction to getting into the community and making sure we grow the numbers. I mean, and part of that is we're not surprised in June that that's where we are. we're tracking that leading up from January on, and this is part of our plan, and we're tracking to that with, again, I've said the phrase before, but leading indicators. So June was no surprise, and we've got a plan in place.
Thank you. I really do like it when the answer to my question is that situation should not arise.
Thank you. Are you done, Michelle? Did you have any follow-up? Okay, Member Bowles.
Thank you. My question is around measurement and the measures that you'll use to know if your students are achieving the goals you have for them, and what measures would you use after a year, even 5 years down the road? What are those measures? You talked somewhat about lag and lead measures. We're pretty good in education to look at lag measures, but what are those lead measures that you've devised that you will look at to say our kids on task?
So we're looking at data the teachers are looking at data all the time. We're looking at data as a board every month when the director comes and reports to us. We have baseline data. DIBELS tells us what our goals are, and we, for example, if we choose to use DIBELS K6, we'll have those measures. We know what they need to be. We've got the curriculum-based, computer-aided instruction. Again, we know what's good and what works. We haven't selected one, but let's say it's Lexia. It lets you know real time where those kids are. So we know what the goal is, and we know where they are. We track that data daily. We track it in the board meetings monthly. We look at the end of the year. We're comparing year to year. We look at student performance. There's other key things we're looking at, not just test results, but one of the things these kids have to be able to do is articulate their learning plan, their professional or personalized learning plan, be able to articulate what their goals are, self-monitor their progress, and figure out the next steps. That's a big component of what we're trying to do here. So we will have a rubric in place that the advisors are using to make sure that those kids are able to do that, because that's, John Hattie, he's kind of like my boyfriend. I don't really know him, but I love to read his research. That's a 1.44 effect size on just getting kids to understand where they are and where they need to go and the next steps to get there. So it's probably not even what you asked, but...
It's the Australian accent.
The clencher.
Vice Chair Tonks.
Man, Lonnie, there's a reason why I like you. We share the same boyfriend. Hattie's meta-analysis and his research on feedback and clear instruction and all that good stuff.
And
Gotta
he
love
has
it.
no idea.
And the Australian accent. I'll admit it too. I thank you again for being here. We've had good conversations over the years, and I just have to say, after former Senator Stevenson's many years of reading and research, and you and I have had lots of conversations as well, I am so excited to give you the opportunity to put your money where your mouth is and to see you have the opportunity to implement the things that you've been talking about for years, not just with the research-based stuff. I mean, I hear you, the self-determination theory with Ryan and DC, the Daniel Pink stuff, the Hattie, all of those things that you've talked about, but your vision for charter schools and where you thought they would go, it is a lot harder to implement than it is to talk about, and you now have the opportunity to take all those things that you thought were going to happen, and you get to go make it happen. So I am thrilled that you have this opportunity, and we will be excited to see how that works out for you, and I'm excited to see what that looks like. So thank you for being here.
So do we get to skip the vote then?
Well, I'm only one board member. If I have to explain to you how boards work, then maybe we need to walk this back a bit.
We are through all of our regular questions that we had for you. Do board members have any other questions? Okay, thank you.
May I just offer one other thought?
Put in the nickel.
Yeah, you put a nickel in the pocket. We haven't talked a lot about student agency, and that's really what attracts me to this, is because the brain research and educational research shows that when a student is in charge of his or her own learning, and they set goals regularly, and they get it monitored, and they see progress, and they get those badges or whatever that looks like as far as seeing that accomplishment, that is when learning truly becomes joyful. You know, Harvard Center on the Developing Child has done research called Serve and Return, where an infant creates its own brain architecture by serving and returning to the adult caregiver, the parent, or the sibling, and they get a return most of the time. And it's that creates the brain architecture, and that's really how we learn throughout our lives. I was attending a brain research conference in San Diego where they talked about the fact that learning requires agency. And when you make that attempt, the neurons reach out and form potential intelligence. It only becomes permanent when you get feedback in the moment of the attempt, not the next day with red marks on your paper, but in the moment of the attempt. And when you get that feedback in the moment of the attempt, there are 3 chemicals that seal the connection. One of those is dopamine, which gives you joy in learning, and all authentic learning is always joyful. And another is serotonin, which gives you that stand up straight with your chest out, I can do this kind of attitude. And that's what we want to deliver to our kids. I believe that we have the capacity to win the war on drugs by teaching kids to make their own dopamine and serotonin rather than getting it in illicit ways. And that's why I'm excited about it, because I want to honor their agency.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. We
Thanks.
appreciate being here.
We'll take a quick break, 3 to 4 minutes, and then we will have Monticello. You can start moving up to the table when you're ready.
Turn this. You have a chance to sign it. Pardon me? You have a chance to sign it. Yeah, it's right over there. Awesome.
I just handed, that's my job, is to hand it over to James today.
Thank you, Brett.
Senator?
Yes. Hey, how are you? I got a cold.
Oh, do you?
You're going to expand? Is that what you're here for?
Replicate. Do another one.
Great.
Hopefully.
Going to get started. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are starting now our first replication application, and our first school up is Monticello Academy, and we will, was this set up the same way, Rebecca? They're going to give a quick introduction and...
Similar interviews and explain why they wish to replicate.
Okay, all right, I'll turn the time over to you then. Neither's mine. None of them are on at this point, so make sure they're all turned on. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Yes, and yes, okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Jenny Ossink. I am the chair of the Board of Trustees for Monticello Academy. Present we have Randy Lim, who is our business manager, Kim Coleman, who's the executive director, Joel Coleman, member of the board, Dane Roberts, who is our director and principal, Martell Winters, and Jennifer Warnes, who are also members of the board. Any additional information? Those are the introductions.
We may ask, did you have anything you wanted to say? Did you have a quick introduction of why you'd like to replicate?
We're seeking to replicate a 13-year-old school charter. Current population is high ethnicity, high economically disadvantaged area. We've also had a change in management and direction. We've hired a new director from Rice Educational Entrepreneurship Program out of Texas, and he's one of the top school administrator schools in the nation. And I can delegate to Kim Coleman to give some additional information about that. She was responsible for some of the recruiting process on that.
You know what, probably at this point we could start asking questions, and a lot of that will come out.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here. Please explain your mission and vision and how the school is fulfilling a need in the community that you want to replicate in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The school has been in existence, the current school, for about 13 years, and speaking to the original mission and vision, that's remained consistent over time. But at the time, we were a bunch of neighbors that were frustrated with our options. many of our schools in the area, in the primary service area, were underperforming year after year on, at the time, the No Child Left Behind metrics under AYP, and came together. We had sort of rolled up sleeves, volunteered in schools, PTA, community councils, and felt like really we needed something different. So we formed Monticello Academy, a large community effort. We knew what our demographics were, and we wanted to make sure that we met as many needs of that local demographic. We're one of the earliest charter schools. I think we were number 11 to be approved. At the time, free lunch services weren't being conducted in very many charter schools, but we knew our population would have a significant number of students qualifying for free and reduced lunch. We wanted to make sure no family had to choose between lunch and an option and a good education. The school is a liberal arts education. We were the first school to have full-scale Singapore math implementation, and we brought back a strong emphasis in art, music, foreign language. We have a Chinese emphasis in our school. We had Spanish for a couple years, but we wanted to focus more on that primary foreign language mission. We brought back PE. That was something that wasn't being done in our area schools. So some of our innovation in some ways were going back to some things that we knew historically were tried and true. So we are, as Chairwoman Osink mentioned, we're sort of under new management. Last year we brought in Dane Roberts from Rice, out of Texas. Rice's education entrepreneurship program. So that's one of the, he's one of the top 65 education administrators. So what we've done in the last year and a half is focused a lot of investment and resources on professional development and having fidelity to our chartered mission and our chartered programs. And so so the direction that we're going is very positive, and we had this opportunity to expand in a high-growth area of Davis County, and so that's why we're here seeking to do that. Our programs are research-based, and we would like to replicate that and make that offering for students in Davis County, in West Point.
So will your school look very similar, the way you implement your programs, everything similar to what you're doing where you are now?
Yes, yes.
Exactly the same?
Exactly the same. Well, all of our programming absolutely would be the same, and that's the essence of the replication. We do, looking at the demographics, we will probably be serving a population with less at-risk factors. So probably less ethnicity, less economically disadvantaged. So some of our resources will shift to reflect those different needs in that community.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Chair Tonks.
So tell me how Monticello will help the State Charter School Board fulfill our vision.
Is that our job, to help you guys?
Absolutely. The vision's right there.
Really? I always thought you guys were supportive overseers of us. I'm just kidding. So maybe I can speak to that a little bit. First, most important thing we can do is by performing well and by remaining true to our charter that you authorized, working in conjunction with you that way. Also, just making sure that we have fidelity to not only the chartered requirements, but also all the reporting requirements of the State Board of Education and compliances and those kind of things, and being kind of a bright, shining jewel in the crown of charter schools here in Utah. Was that flowery enough, the last little part? Thanks.
Member Bassett.
On that note, will you share with us how is your school currently accomplishing the contractual goals outlined in your charter?
Do you want to answer that one, Dave?
Sure, I can start. So there's lots of different goal areas outlined in the charter. I know as part of the application there was a review of our progress with regard to those goals, and The vast majority of them are met in terms of student performance, parent engagement, fidelity to program. Also, to answer the question of how we support the goals of the charter board in terms of choice, innovation, student success. Traditional schools in the last, probably since the No Child Left Behind era, have increasingly focused on skills-based work. Math and reading, of course, are continually drilled, and that has led to a little bit of a weakening of the rich content that many parents would like to see in schools: history, science, the arts. Many parents want a richer curriculum than simply what they sometimes get with a test focus. The core knowledge curriculum, which was a part of the innovation of Monticello, is something that our parents love and that I think many parents in other service areas would love to see. So that's been something that's been consistently a part of our school and that we continue to really hew to. The Singapore Math is a time-tested curriculum. Again, that's a different offering than what parents often get in other schools. And that's something that we are both continuing to implement and also strengthen fidelity to. The parent involvement piece is another big piece of our charter agreement that we're really proud of our parent community and their involvement in the school. We ask them to contribute 40 hours every year toward their children. We have parents, or towards the success of the school, we have parents coming in to volunteer in the classroom, helping small groups, reading with children, helping with events in the evenings. So there's really just an amazing community that lots of parents are attracted to, and that is another part of our charter agreement. I don't know if there were any other specific parts of the charter agreement that you wanted us to touch on.
That touches on the two that had flagged for me. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Member Smith.
I have, I guess, first a comment and then a question. And I'm going off script here, but, you know, I know, right? You can hardly believe it. As I read here in our compliance section, the comment part, it's really hard for me to support a school asking for replication or expansion in light of this, which is, it says the final complete application was late, and an incomplete application was submitted 5 minutes before the deadline, which gives me a serious question about your ability to have attention to detail in following guidance. The second thing that gives me great pause is the next portion, which says, your application was not submitted to the superintendent of the local district as required by 53G/5/304. And last year, Four Corners Academy was not permitted to present a new school application for failure to follow this statute. So if you can't obey the law and you can't follow the guidance that we give you, wow, you're up against some really tough, it's going to be really hard to get me to support your request. Now the question part. The question part is in the next portion of this compliance section. I'm just going to read it to you. Staff have received 6 complaints over the previous 2 years regarding SPED violations and discrimination against students. One complaint alleged students are referred to by their skin color, e.g. Black Sam. A USB employee reported to staff that teachers call the school, quote, a ghetto, unquote, and frequently complain about Hispanic students, quote, wrecking the school, unquote. So more than relating, as that relates to expansion, that just, I mean, these are the kind of things that like make my hair light on fire. Really distressed by this. So help me to be reassured that this is never, ever, ever going to happen.
I'd like to address your initial comments. So I believe that the application was on time, but it was missing a signature because our board chair was in the hospital in another state. And what we did, we submitted, I mean, I asked, first of all, for advice from staff on how we handled that situation. And so the application itself was, I believe it was done on time because that was kind of a little bit of a group effort and we knew the deadline. But we couldn't get that last signature. And she may want to speak to that. Regarding submitting the application to the superintendent, I have a set of compliances and instructions for how to submit the application, and I didn't see that part. So the fact that that exists in code still, I knew that was part of the law 13 years ago, didn't know that that was still a requirement. So I have met with Superintendent Newey. We had a long discussion. He's been in the loop on these things and is a friend of charter schools. Did you?
Yeah, I'd like to address the special ed complaints. So about probably 8-9 years ago, there were some internal political challenges we had within the community of parents in our school, which my understanding is not entirely uncommon. But at the time, there were certain complaints that were made, and what we did is we had an independent third party come in and investigate everything. They were completely unfounded. They weren't true at all. And I actually run a special education school district. We're extremely committed to IDEA. As far as I know, there have never been any findings against our school, any material findings in our special ed program or violations of IDEA at all. So there's a huge difference between a complaint that 8 years ago was launched by maybe an unhappy parent. Now, I may be wrong. We might have had a violation here or there. I don't know, even my own current schools. Occasionally, we do things inaccurately. And the beauty of IDEA is that there's a due process. If there's a problem, there's a great process, and we always remedy it immediately. We're working with humans. Our special ed directors are fantastic. In fact, what we did just to ensure at our charter school that nothing like that would ever happen in the future, we contracted with the special education director to direct our program that wasn't even one of our employees, so to speak. And we thought that would give even more credence to that we're not trying to hide the ball or anything like that. We've got someone on the outside that's well respected by many schools and very connected here to the special ed department at the State Board of Education.
There's also one of the quotes that you mentioned under the new management, and one of those quotes I've heard, and that employee is not with our school anymore, and that those kinds of events, if they ever occurred, would be very directly and swiftly taken care of. I am familiar with one of the quotes you mentioned. That employee is no longer with the school and would be ineligible to ever come back.
Maybe I could just add a little bit. So I came in July of 2017, and one of the first emails I got was some of the complaints that you mentioned. I just want to say that I thank you for your strong reaction to that, because I felt the exact same way. It sickens me to think that anyone would say those words in a school. One of the first things we did was review staff, and yes, there were staffing changes when people did not understand the criticality of our mission of serving low-income students, serving students of color. That's not at all part of our philosophy. So there were some staffing changes made. Some people don't work there anymore who did not agree with that, maybe weren't fully on board with that vision. We had a staff meeting. One of my first conversations with our staff is what our mission is, and if you don't feel totally on board, then please find another job. In the subsequent year and a half, I have not heard or seen any sentiments of those kinds. We did have a full special ed audit last year that had no findings, so I feel like we're doing a great job serving those students.
Thank you for your response. I appreciate knowing that, if there are problems, you try to be aware of them and try to address them. I will still say that it's really hard for me to overcome failure to comply with statute and with deadlines.
Member Phillips.
As you look at another school over which you would have supervision, how do you envision the administrative structure and perhaps even the governance structure, or what sorts of policy decisions do you anticipate having to address in that sort of, I was going to say pre-operational year, where you're asking for something to be expedited, so in months leading up to that particular event and opening?
You want me to speak? So we don't actually anticipate changing anything governance structure-wise except for adding additional FTE for the new campus that would do that. Several years ago, we made structural changes anticipating that someday we might want to have an additional campus or two somewhere. And when the opportunity presented itself to us and we had requests from that community to consider coming into that area, we thought, well, we're set up. And is this feasible? And so we started discussing it as a board. So the changes that we would make, of course, is to probably hire someone who would oversee an additional campus and hire the faculty for the upcoming, the year before we open. But other than that, we're already kind of set up in that way to have more centralized corporate services for the business part of it. And then of course, Director Roberts would be the one that would supervise the new people.
Thanks so much.
Member Smith. You're back up. The other Member Smith. What do you, as you considered, replication, right? As we considered replication, what did you see as the pros and the cons to replicating?
Well, I'll just keep talking. I mean, I helped write the original charter, so this is kind of in my blood. But first of all, the strength of the program. The program that we designed in 2005 was actually awesome. And since then, so much has improved in the ways of personalizing learning and using technology tools to enhance that. But the fundamental philosophy, the mission, the approach was Singapore Math. We were the first school in the state to implement Singapore Math. And our Chinese language program, we thought none of that has to change. That still is a very powerful model. And so as far as strengths goes, I think the original vision still holds. The weaknesses, I would say, is we're actually used to working in a very challenging socioeconomic area with unique challenges. We don't currently operate a school in a place like West Point, where you have higher socioeconomic status, and it's a small town. It's not the second largest city in the state like West Valley City is. And as far as business operations, we've been on solid financial footing ever since the beginning. I don't see that as being a challenge at all. In fact, we were the first school in the entire country to use bond conduit financing right out of the chute without any operating history. And ever since day one, we've been very, very solid financially and had great strength there. And so I guess the challenges just are whatever would come with the new community that we haven't operated in yet. We're very confident in our leadership ability and in our ability to hire qualified educators. We haven't always had that luxury, but now we have a reputation among other educators, and the current ones that are there are extremely happy.
So a follow-up to that, because you addressed part of the decision to replicate, but have you considered what the implications, positive and negative, would be on things like school culture and how replication schools often struggle to actually replicate what happened at the original school?
I think culture is nuanced with the community. The culture that exists in the current community, I don't know that you can replicate culture or that you would want to. What we want to do is facilitate the building of a community, of a school community in a new community, in a new area, so that we can facilitate that, encourage that. We don't want to, I don't think we want to replicate the same culture in an our way. So, but that we've been successful in helping build a community, which takes some time, took years really to have a sense of unique community, and we hope to have that and again facilitate that. It'll be a whole new culture and community, but a culture, I think the underpinnings of both cultures that are rooted in academic standards and an emphasis on academic achievement and a rigorous program, that's the beginning. But the culture itself will build in a way that's unique to a new community.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Member Bowles.
I think the question I have here has been answered, so I'm going to ask my own curious question. Just because I know the area that you're applying to bring a school into West Point. I know West Point, those 13 communities of Davis County. So can you give me an idea of where you're thinking specifically in West Point that school be located? I know that there are other charters nearby and other district schools nearby. So kind of what would be that population, and where are you thinking of locating within West Point?
Okay, so if you're familiar with West Point, do
am.
you know where the City Hall is?
Yes.
It is right across the street from the City Hall. So I might refer you to a letter from the mayor that we submitted with our application, where he's in very strong support, asked for this type of entity to exist. He notes in his letter the relocatables, the high growth area that it is. So it's sort of even sort of the westward expansion point of West Point. What's exciting to me is I think I'm looking around. I think some of you may have attended Excellence in Education last month, and there are agricultural opportunities, and we're seeing some really fantastic things happen in some other cities, other states. Namely, San Antonio has been able to take some suburban and urban settings and marry it with the agriculture efforts. And so as I look at this potential place where we may go and look at the silo across the street and look at the fields and think of really some unique opportunities to marry some rural opportunities, agriculture opportunities with the educational efforts that we have in the school that could be unique, would also create a different culture than the more urbanized suburban school we have now. So that's exciting, and as the mayor mentioned, there's a need. Speaking with Superintendent Newey, we all know that we're seeing tremendous growth in a couple areas of our state, tend to be west sides of counties, and we've done the west side of Salt Lake County.
Thank you. Can you help us understand the relationship between Monticello Academy and Monticello Incorporated?
I can do that. About 3-4 years ago, it was recommended to us that by our we went through a process of refunding bonds at different times, and this was one of the times when we did some bond refunding. And at the time, our legal counsel and financial counsel talked about different corporate structures that are used with charter schools and with 501c3 corporations and for-profit corporations as well. And they said sometimes a very common model is where you'll have divided into two 501c3s, and one would be like a holding company and take care of centralized type services. The other one would hold the contracts, and in this case that would be the charter. And so we created Monticello Academy Properties just in case we ever did a replication, that would be the entity that would be the lessee or the property owner in the future, and then we would still run the charter through our original corporation, which is what it is. Essentially, we operate like we did before, but it's kind of like a traditional district model where you have centralized district services and then you have schools themselves, but just on a scale like charter schools. So
Monticello Incorporated is a for-profit organization?
No.
It's still a for-profit?
No, Monticello Properties is a nonprofit. It was created just to serve Monticello Academy.
They're actually audited by Squire altogether as one audit.
Yeah, all the finances are public.
Financial entity.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Tonks. Oh, go ahead.
So it sounds to me like you've, well, let me ask you, so for your Monticello Incorporated, does it have only the same power as Monticello Academy in terms of the IRS? So are you tax exempt on both?
Yes.
Fantastic, okay. Oh, and one other thing, and do you share the same board, or is it a reduced board for the academy, or for the incorporation?
Monticello Properties, the board is Martell and myself, and one other person who was a former board member for the school.
Okay, that's typical. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to go
Extra
back to
temps.
what you said about Superintendent Newey. We actually had some public comment, and I'm just going to read what he submitted to us. He said, "I am wondering what the difference is between this school and any regular public school. It seems that some of their delivery plans are a bit conflicting in my mind. It just seems like they should have said, we want to put a school like any other public school in and call it a charter. I guess I need more reason to see this as anything different than other public schools." So what I hear you saying is that he's supportive and he wants a charter school, but his public comment doesn't seem as supportive as what I hear you saying. Can you help me? Can you clear that up for me?
So he just expressed that he's supportive of charter schools, that they actually even have their administration meet with the local charter school administrations, which is a whole different landscape than 2005. So that's exciting to me, that to think that we can have those sorts of relationships with the local district, because it's really taken some time, and few of us remember that frequently the local districts were antagonistic even. So the nature of the charter school world, both functionally and legally and statutorily, was not to say that a school has to be different than another school. And there are unique aspects of the charter school that is not going to be like the district school across the street or across the town, that we do have unique opportunities for choice that don't exist. It does exist, but I'm not real sure what he's asking. It was exciting to me to learn of some of the innovations in Davis District. We are also doing some of those same things, but that doesn't mean we should be precluded from giving a choice because they may be doing some of the things, or another school may. We all teach English, we all teach math, we do it a little bit differently. We have uniforms, we do create a different community than maybe a neighborhood school. So some of the aspects are subtle, some are big, and I'm not sure what he would want to see in a charter school, but we have proven programs that, like it has already been mentioned, you don't get to pick the Singapore Math School, you don't get to pick the Chinese school. We offer a lot of those unique things together in this. And
I think I misunderstood your original comment, and I think you clarified it for me, that he's generally supportive of charter schools, and I think that's a tribute to Board Member Bowles, former superintendent of Davis District, who set that up and meeting with charter schools on a regular basis, which you're right, that is atypical of districts across the state.
Still?
And I know, it's shocking. What can I say? But that is atypical of districts across the state, and that's something that former Superintendent Bowles put into place, and that is appealing to any charter that's looking to go into Davis District. So generally speaking, Superintendent Newey is generally supportive of charter schools. I think I misinterpreted that as he was specifically supportive of your charter school going into Davis District. Does that sound like I'm on the right page as far as the clarification for
Yes.
that? Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for what you started in Davis County, Member Bowles. It works really well there. It's very nice. I've been a part of those meetings before, and it's a great thing. We'd like to see more districts
I have
do.
a question.
Yeah.
I loved in this portion where you said that program highlights, it just says encouraging parents to resume their rights and responsibilities. I'd love to know your miracle work on that one, because I think that's something all schools would be interested in. So what is it that you're uniquely doing or is happening that promotes that or allows that to take place?
Well, originally, that would be the original language. We started by having living room meetings and had to advance to library meetings, and until we'd have dozens and dozens of families that really wanted a choice. So fundamentally, that fundamental piece of that parent involvement is to get to choose, When we, in our planning year, we had, I want to say 11 or 12 committees that were all parent-run. We just said, you know, here's sort of the duty, the purpose of that committee, go with it. What was kind of fun is people applied and said what they wanted to participate in, and we got this application from a person who was a world-respected tissue sterilization biologist, and we thought, well, what committee do you put him on? So he's on our board now, and so he's our STEM rep, and as well as Jennifer, I'd like to reference Jennifer Warnes. She's been an active parent in the school, only recently came onto the board, but very active in the school. Maybe I'll ask her to speak to this, what her experience was going from a parent to now being a governing member of the board. Jennifer's also, she works in higher education. She's, well, I'll let you say what your title is, but Jennifer could probably answer from the parent perspective what that looks like.
I think one of the things that was most exciting for me as we were looking, as I had two daughters getting ready to join elementary school, was to find a school that gave more than English, math, and science. We wanted to see a school that had music, that had fine arts. And as we looked around to the different charter school, there was just something that was a touch above everybody else, which was Monticello. And we were very, very excited as we enrolled our daughters there. And they have excelled, and they have really, really taken hold in all of the extra things that were part of going to Monticello. As they came home being proud of their membership there, I wanted to contribute and be part of the parent council, had opportunities to work with other moms and dads that were there, and we volunteered and made a community that parents could be also proud of where their children were going. And that, I think, is one of the forces that Mr. Roberts spoke to, is that we have this parent group that is constantly trying to go into the classrooms and to help and to assist and to build that culture. And so it's great to be part of that.
So this, because you're replicating this somewhere else, how you can't really transfer the families.
Sure.
Right? So I guess my thought is how does that happen in a new environment? I've been part of groups that are thrilled to, get something going about, whatever they're passionate about, but then you go somewhere else, and to have that same passion doesn't always carry over in the same way. So I'm just wondering, how will you make that happen, or what does that look like, and how do you create that in a new environment and area, especially when it's looked at maybe being expedited, that kind of a thing? What does that look like?
I can speak at least to, even from the founding families, after the school exists for several years, some of that initial energy also wears off. So I'm not going to say that we have completely figured out parent participation. It's always an ongoing, difficult problem. But some of the things we're doing now are providing a lot of opportunities for parent feedback, whether that's through surveys, come and talk to the principal, meetings regularly where parents are invited in to have just an open door, an open relationship. It's a constant conversation with our teachers as well. The teachers are really the primary interface between families and the school. So we talk to the teachers a lot about communication, ensuring that there's regular communication. We emphasize voice communication. People get enough emails, but they really want to hear from the teacher. So we have the teachers track and set goals on the amount of parent communication. They pick up the phone, they have the parents come in. We have them really emphasize providing opportunities. A lot of parents want to participate, but they don't know how until the teacher says, hey, here's something that I could use, or here's something I can send home with your kid. If you're a working parent, could you just cut out this lamination for me tonight and send it back with your kid tomorrow? But it's strategic, and I think that's something we might not replicate the exact dynamic that we have currently at our campus, but I think through those practices of open doors, of lots of opportunities for engagement, and training our teachers in how to solicit engagement, I think we can recreate a lot of that.
Can I add on to that too? I have two small children. I have a 5th grader and a 3rd grader at Monticello, first year. We were homeschooling parents beforehand, and then my kids were at a different charter school in a different district for a while. We moved our kids specifically to Monticello because of the emphasis on curriculum and parent involvement and parent choice. I have a fifth grader right now who has a science class. He loves his science teacher. What's amazing about it is, as a parent, I can't be in the classroom every single day sitting there watching what my kid's doing. Monticello has this amazing system where we have blogs. There's regular teacher communication with parents. I can log into the blog and I can look at what my child's doing right there that day. I can participate by asking my own questions to the teacher and asking my student, and it helps me stay involved, and it helps encourage and have access to the curriculum outside of the school as well, which is really important for our family anyway. For a school of choice, I want to make sure that we're partnering with teachers, and teachers, it should be, active participation, and I should have just as much input and say on things as what happens to my child, and I love that I have that access and that availability, and I love that Monticello supports that.
I think also some of the secret sauce or is the challenge with any organization that needs volunteers. And sometimes if you just put out, we need volunteers, people don't match themselves with that. But I think next to me is Randy Lim, and her family was also a founding family, and they were matched for technology. And her husband, one of the fathers in our school, helped build the foundation for all of our technology. You don't frequently see, we're calling for volunteers who can fish wire through a school, but he had this talent, and we were able to engage so many families from the beginning with unique talents, with unique abilities and skills and occupations to feel valuable in the school, to be able to contribute to things. And we've named sections of the school even after amazing volunteers from the beginning, since they have ownership on having built a part of the school, and that legacy continues, and we continue to plug people in where they have interests and expertise. And
I'll throw one more thing in. There are 9 SIS systems that handshake with the state board systems, right? And one of those is called Compass, and that was developed by one of our parents for Monticello, and now several other schools use it also in the state. But that's the kind of real and amazing success that we've had just because of having parents participate where they might not have ever had those opportunities in other places.
Member Bassett.
Thank you. So I've read the letter of support from West Point Mayor, and I've made note of a few things, dozens of families, strong community support. But I'd like to push for something super specific. What evidence do you have that families in Davis District and West Point support the opening of this school?
So I don't know that we have hard evidence. We just have anecdotal comments from the community. Again, the mayor, your mayor is a sounding board for a cross-section of residents in any community. So when the mayor expresses that he believes this desire exists, that's at least somewhat reliable. The ability for new schools to conduct feasibility studies, that's something that we would likely use at least a portion of startup grant on that to really have a better understanding, a reliable and valid feasibility study. But we have a number of members of the community, including the property we're looking at acquiring, if we're approved, that property owner has actually thought to use his property for this purpose because of chatter in the community for a desire for choice. A lot of relocatables out in that area. Parents tend to want their children in a solid facility, but that isn't a reliable indicator. So most of this is anecdotal, but based on the anecdotes of people who are fairly reliable to represent those community desires.
We didn't go looking for West Point. They came and requested it from us. After talking around, the members of the community and those folks that were there talked to people in the charter world that said, here's some existing charter schools you might want to consider. They did their research and came to us. So again, that's not data that we have obviously or super reliable, but that's how it came about.
And who are they?
people that live there and work there. I don't know, they didn't come to me.
Okay. Member Phillips.
We noticed that you're seeking an expedited opening, and so the question would be, convince us, if you would, that you're able to pull that off, and especially when you need a waiver that can't be given until March, giving you 5 months then to really get this up and running the way that you'd like to see it running, after the manner of your own school that's in existence. Just let me know what your plan is to make sure that can happen so quickly.
So I'd like to just address why we're seeking the waiver in the first place. The property then did become available. The unique nature of charter school financing is that there are very few options for a school to get financing. We've seen since I started this in 2005, those limited options typically revolve around charter development companies. The various models can be that they will provide a building and then lease it, or that they may just be the bank for a charter school. This wasn't okay for us back in 2006 when we started looking at those numbers, and we wanted more money to stay in the school. We put a finance dream team together and ended up finding a way to bond for the school. And again, it's already been mentioned that we were the first school to pioneer bond conduit financing. What that meant was we kept more money in the school. What that meant was our local school was 1 to 30 devices. We started 1 to 6 and have built 1 to 1. It meant that we could offer competitive salaries and competitive benefits and have a state-of-the-art facility. We started fully fiber wired. We had interactive whiteboards in 2006, 2007, interactive whiteboards and audio enhancements in every classroom. The ability to control your finances from the beginning has a tangible, hard effect on what you can spend on children. And so when this property became available, again, we're limited in when we were looking at a 2-year from application to opening. Somebody has to hold on to a piece of property and say, yeah, you don't have to pay for the year that we're looking at. That's very difficult. That, again, forces most entities to have to run to a charter development company where charges are at a premium. They're usually for-profit entities. A bank's not going to loan to us. We don't have operational history. So we do have a situation where we have the facility, but what do we do for a year? Facilities on costs are high. That's the second highest cost next to or they're comparable to your HR. So we're asking for the waiver because we want to spend more money on children and less on the facility. We would have to have that year of payments capitalized in some manner. We are having discussions with the property owner to minimize that in case you don't give us the waiver. And we do have to sit on it another year. But it is a financial hurdle that we wish to overcome. Typically what would happen is you'd probably just have to prorate a year's worth of the lease, the mortgage, whatever, on top of whatever the remaining financial terms are for that facility. That's a cost that is throwing money away. And when you're looking at anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, you'd really rather buy some whiteboards. You'd really rather pay some hard-to-find teachers. Chinese teachers are incredibly hard to find. Any number of things that you would want that money to benefit students with, that's what we're trying to accomplish through the waiver.
Thank you. Superintendent Stallings.
Yes, thank you. Part of the question that Member Phillips just asked makes me think of something that if the State Charter School Board does authorize the expedited request, I think that you'll want to be prepared to address with the State Board when that comes to the State Board, and I know is a question or concern of staff related to projections. So you may know that the history or the reason behind the October first deadline in R277552 is because the number or the projection for the upcoming year is reviewed by a committee that includes staff of the State Board of Education, staff of the legislature, and the governor's office to determine funding priorities for the legislature, which ultimately have an impact on distribution formulas, et cetera, as well as for purposes of taking money from the districts where those students might come. So in this case, probably Davis, Weber School District, maybe Ogden, maybe a couple of others. The local replacement money that you would receive as a school, money would be taken or budgeted from those districts to support the local replacement funding. I give that background because 535 students is a large number of students to introduce or to amend those projections after this committee has done all their work in October, November, December, and it looks like most of you are very aware of this issue. So two things I guess I'm wondering about. Number one, do you think that you'll actually have go all the way to 535 students this fall, or is it more likely to be somewhere half of that or less, number one? Number two, if both the authorizer and the State Board of Education were to grant the board waiver and expedite this, would you anticipate needing that revenue starting on July 1, or would you be able to wait until November 1? Normally what happens when other schools have asked for an exception, and usually it's been more like 50 or 100 students, not a whole school and not 535. But the school has agreed, if they receive the expedited request, to wait until November 1 to receive the funding for those extra 50 or 100 students, because what it would require us to do at the state board level is to determine and essentially say to Weber School District, Davis School District, we're now going to cut your students on July 1 by 100 or 200. So do you see that if we give you funding on July 1 for those 535 students, we have to cut the budgets of other schools to support that? If you wait until November 1, then that always happens, where some get more money, some get less, depending on the actual enrollment, but it wouldn't be based on projections on July 1 when you actually haven't enrolled. So hopefully I've provided a little bit of the background of what some of the conversation will be when it comes to the board, and some of the complexities that our finance staff begin to worry about, and the conversations they have with your colleagues in the districts and the neighboring charter schools, because that could impact the funding they receive if you start to receive funding for these 535 students on July 1. So
having done this for a number of years, we all know that those numbers move, and that's why we budget smartly and appropriately contingencies within budgets, because we do know local replacement may choose, digital teaching and learning grant, for this year got to say yay, we got more. But we know that can also go less. So we operate within contingencies within our budget. Over 13 years, we have maintained and continue to build different reserves that we would likely, in that scenario, we'd probably have to look at our bond covenants and see if we can flex that money almost like a loan, I guess, for those couple of months. Maybe working with the facilities owner. There's a number of things that we probably have to look at. We can't predict that enrollment, but we believe we've always hit enrollment. So in a new community that is starting some chatter on the excitement, I think that we get there fairly easily. But yeah, we keep that absolutely in the back of our minds. What if we don't enroll? Reality is we're going K-6, but what sixth grader is going to leave their last year of their elementary and come to a brand new school? So we've been creative in the past and working with the state charter division on flexing enrollment at different grade levels, so if we need to do that. But as far as covering those couple months, that's an option if that poses a risk. I think we've got a number of options we can look at to mitigate that risk to the state, and maybe agree to that November
deadline.
Okay, Teresa Tyre has a question.
Really quick. Oh.
And then Brian, and then Member Smith. Sorry, Member Bowles, then Member.
Mine's really quick, and only because I've been involved in charter schools since 2001, so probably longer than anybody in this room. But as I looked at your little sheet that has the information, I noticed it said 11th charter school in the state. I wonder if you could tell me where you got that number from and what that really means, because I'm thinking that isn't correct.
So we were year 2006, and there was a batch of us that were all approved. So we were about 11 through
I think
16 or
you
something
should
like
probably
that.
check that.
So
because
there were only 10, like 10 or so open the year before.
No, because there were 8 in the pilot program, and then there were...
Oh, there was quite a few in between 2001 and 2006. I was on the board then. We didn't have a charter school board. The board, approved them. So you might want to check that before you...
So I'll tell you where I get the number. I didn't actually count the schools, but that's what John Broberg said during a meeting with us, and I've always just repeated it. I have never verified that number, so I'm glad you said that.
Please verify, because I think it's way more than that.
Okay.
Not that it matters, it's just...
No, that's a very valid point. We should probably be very accurate on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Member Bowles.
Thank you. In your charter goals, you focus on academic performance and improvement, which is really good for every school to have that as goal. The goal reads, students will perform at or above the local school district average on statewide assessments and student scores on statewide assessments, and they will increase yearly until they meet or exceed state averages. In the application, you indicate that the school is meeting those goals, your current school. However, the data don't appear to support that claim. So to help us so that we don't see a discrepancy, help to explain why you believe that the school is meeting those goals so that we don't see that as a discrepancy.
So when we, thank you for the question. When we started the charter school 2006, 2007, we drew from 4 or 5 different counties. The primary service area wasn't even something you could really identify yet to really narrow the market, I guess. So as time's gone on and more charter schools have filled in and more district schools have been built, we're now looking, and this is language I actually have borrowed from this division, is really when we look at comparative data, the relevant metric is that primary service area and the district. And I think I noted in the discussion on the performance that we've got places that are strong. We've got some that aren't as strong as we'd like to have. But I did pass out, or I gave to Jennifer, some charts that highlight these places where we continue to be number one in a lot of places in the primary service area of 20 schools, about 20 schools. We've looked at that, for years. That was, I'm returning to the school after about 1.5 years ago. I've just come back to the school, so we're really looking at the metrics that are relevant to understanding how we're performing. So we've got kind of mixed things. Somewhere along with the state, some we exceed, somewhere behind, and you can note our strongest points through about 4th grade. We do extremely well. Some of our weaker spots have been 5th and 6th. Then we bump up again. 7th and 8th is very, very strong performing. And the metrics that we're looking at, our original charter, I know that we've been encouraged to maybe at this time through an application process, it might be a good time to review your charter if it's 13 years old, that those original metrics maybe aren't as relevant or helpful as something now. So what we've done is looked at the primary service area mainly, but we have been growing that rate that we in the original charter said that we would try to grow at, but there are definitely places where we're not exceeding the state average or the district average. Some we are and some we aren't. So it seems like the primary service area
should make the most sense, because these are the communities we draw from. And I don't know if it makes sense to compare us to a school in Draper as much as the surrounding West Valley City Schools. So this is probably something I think as a board we should, or our board should look at. What are the more relevant metrics to review for comparison? And I didn't know a better way to say it other than we're good on some but not good on others, because we didn't have lots of space to do that in the application. But so I supplied some additional data for that.
Member Smith.
I find it really disturbing when we ask you a direct question like, explain why you're not meeting your goals, and you say, we are meeting our goals, and then we say the data don't support that you're meeting our goals, and you say, well, we're doing really well in all these other things, and I have a lot of excuses in front of me, but you never really address the question of why you say you're meeting your goals and you're not meeting your goals. So I have trouble with that, but I'm going to set that aside to ask the question I was really prepared to ask. I'm sorry, Ms. Board Chair, could you just say how you say your name, because I don't want to mispronounce it?
Warnes?
Warnes. Okay, so you are not the board chair who signed the previous application?
She's not the board chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, who is the board chair?
I'm the board chair.
And can you say your name?
Ginny Ossink.
Ginny Ossink. So you are the person who signed the application document. This is a really easy question. Did you read it before you signed it?
Yes, I read it.
And so you would notice that the second item on that was a question as to whether you had in fact submitted, as required by law, to the superintendent a copy of your application, which you didn't do. Is that correct?
Okay, yeah, that's correct.
So you signed a document that said you did something you didn't do, and you say that you did read it.
Yes, I read it, and my understanding was that it had been submitted, that we had submitted all the paperwork.
How would you get that understanding?
The second.
Here's my understanding, is that we had a meeting set up with the superintendent to talk to him
Right.
personally and deliver it personally, but...
Which is, we were under the understanding that we were delivering it personally to him.
So,
But that was after.
This was after. No. So this was, and I thought that I mentioned earlier in the meeting that I missed that, and that I did not reach out to Superintendent Newey until after the application was submitted. So I admitted to that earlier, but I'm happy to say it again. I didn't do it.
So you didn't do it,
and
but you said that it was done.
And my board chair was under the impression that it had been done. When we had to read this in a board meeting as per these instructions, and in that board meeting, we had to vote on, or the board had to vote that they comply with those things. It's at another couple days later that I'm submitting it. So she was under the understanding that we had approved were going to do all those
and
things.
it was being submitted.
And so I did not do that part.
I find it disturbing that you would sign a document saying you did something that you did not, in fact, know had been done.
So this was required to have been done in a board meeting prior to submitting it. So she agreed to those things, and
I had to agree and sign it before it was submitted.
Right. But, I mean, I wouldn't sign something that I hadn't read thoroughly enough to know whether I had, in fact, done or not done something. But
well, I think I did read it thoroughly.
So, okay, I guess we're confused. But that...
Did you have a follow-up, or is
I do kind of just have a follow-up comment. Again, I'm really, really concerned when I hear, like, we ask pretty direct questions, and the answers that we get are excuses that I wouldn't accept from my 10-year-old, and they demonstrate a phenomenal lack of organization and problem-solving skills. So, I guess there is no question. I just have to say I can't support this.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, thank you.
Can I respond to the timing issue on this too? I was out of state for a family emergency. My father ended up dying on the same day that we needed these signatures done. No, my cell phone was not available, but we got on it pretty quickly. We did submit the application on time.
The complete application was late.
And I'm really sorry that you have, such a distressing personal emergency but the fact that it was put off until the last minute demonstrates some lack of planning.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your application. And we will, we appreciate you being here and answering our questions. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break. We're a little bit behind schedule, so we'll take about a 3-minute break, and Utah Military Academy is up next.
your shortcut this year.
I think we'll go ahead and get started. We're missing one board member.
Teresa had to leave.
Oh, Teresa left.
Yeah, she
And Jenny left.
Yes.
We're just missing Cindy. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. The next item on the agenda is the replication application capacity interviews for Utah Military Academy. We'll just use the same format as before. If we can get some quick introduction, and then if you have a short speech about why you'd like to replicate, and then we have some questions for you.
Do I stand up, sit down, or how would?
Sit down is fine.
Okay.
Just make sure the mic is on. Yours is on, yeah.
It glows in the dark. All right. So do I sometimes. All right. My name is Chuck Williams, Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Air Force retired. I'm the chairman of the board for Utah Military Academy. To my right is Kurt Oda, former state legislator. He's the vice chair. Chief Master Sergeant Kelly Martin, very famous in her endeavors in the Air Force, and our senior military advisor, our executive director, Mac Throckmorton, and we have Steve Carroll, our academic director, Kit Workman, Major Kit Workman, longtime Air Force guy, and our chief of cadets. And then we have Merlin Newbold, and she's one of our board members. Three of our board members, Darren Beck was not able to be here because he is working. One of our board members, Sharan Reber, is in surgery today. Captain Schreiber is not here. And Vicki McCall is working with DOD in California on BRAC, if you know what that is, Base Realignment and Closure. So what you see is what you get. Sometimes.
And then, Madam Milankowski, so I asked if we should put together a presentation, and I didn't put one together because we were to go over the basic elements of the charter. And so if I were to give you the short and sweet, it would be just vote yes, everybody's happy, right? But I'm sure you have a lot of questions for us, so.
We do. We'll just start into them. Vice Chair Tonks. I'll actually start. Please explain your mission and vision and how the school is fulfilling a need in the communities that you would like to replicate in.
Do you want to do vision mission?
Our vision and mission is to provide opportunity. And, I think we do that as well, if not better than anybody, for cadets of all backgrounds to help achieve, and in some cases, places they never thought they could go. We've had cadets compete in national championships. We've had cadets be able to go to compete that have never left the state of Utah before. Our vision, again, you hear military academy, we want to try to get cadets into, our goal is to prepare every cadet as much as possible to go to a military academy. Not that we expect them to go to military academy, but in my 24 years of experience with junior ROTC, if you do what we tell you to do, your chances are good. And by the way, if you can get into the Air Force Academy, you might be able to get into Cornell. Matter of fact, we have one of our cadets this year, one of our seniors, who is a candidate, a very, very, very strong candidate. He has his nominations, just waiting for Air Force Academy. And he's probably going to go to Cornell instead, depending on what scholarships he's get. He was an early accept to Cornell. And so, where do you want to go? We hope to get you there. We have a young lady, one of our seniors that graduated last year, who's playing NCAA basketball in Kansas. We have one of our cadets who, his whole life, matter of fact, I taught 3 of his siblings. One was, those 3 siblings are all in the military along with his dad, and this cadet, his whole goal was to go in the military. And he was medically disqualified. But because, again, we had another avenue for him, he is now a shining star on base working on the airframe of the F-35. So, again, that vision is where do you want to go and how can we get you there?
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Tonks.
So talk to me a little bit about how your school is implementing the key elements of your charter.
I'm going to pass round robin, put everybody on the spot, right? So, key elements of academics, military.
Okay, I'll do my best to answer that. To be quite honest, I feel very, very overwhelmed here as the newcomer on this team. I've been with the school for about it's been 2.5 years now. And the minute I walked through the door, I went ahead and pulled a couple cadets aside, and I just kind of drilled them, asked them a few questions about what they loved, what they didn't like, and they were very respectful. They were very honest with me. Sorry for the quick side note. Have any of you had the chance to come visit our school?
Okay. Yeah, I've been there.
My son attends the Camp Williams campus.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, so if you've ever been to our North Campus up in Riverdale, you'll notice that the building is not beautiful. We are renting the building. We actually are getting a brand new campus in a 1.5 years, and we're thrilled about it. But when you get onto our campus right now, you'll notice the building is old. It's a little run down. Again, it's not beautiful, and one of the struggles with any charter school is building culture, right? It's building school spirit, because cadets or students come from all different neighborhoods, all different cities, and so it's harder to build a community around the school, right? But when you walk through the hallways, right, at our school, what you'll see is that the culture is thriving, right? And that's something that I immediately fell in love with Utah Military Academy.
Can I help you out a little bit?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm going to rephrase my question, and what I'd like to know is, I'm going to rephrase it, and I'm going to replace key elements with your goals. Does that help you, your charter goals?
Yeah.
Do you have those in front of you?
I
Do you
do.
want me to? Okay.
I do.
All right.
Thank you. Okay. So if you look at our goal sheet, these goals were set. A little caveat. Definitely high. We set very high goals, and you want to set high goals. Anyway.
And for the board members who are following along, this is the charter fidelity detail in the board packet.
Just to make sure we're on the same page, is this what you're looking at?
It's your charter fidelity. Goal number 1, students are qualified for and accepted into a military academy of their choice. Number of
Yes.
students admitted.
Okay, good. So actually, I want to address the targets. If you look at our targets, year 1, we were hoping for 3. By year 3, we were hoping for 8. Just to address those accomplishments, last year we had 5 cadets accepted into a military academy. All right, and so yes, that falls short of our goals, but that was also higher than any other school in the country that we know of. Okay, that we've been able to find. So if you're aware, in order to make it into a military academy, you do need congressional, or I guess you can have senator nomination. And so the state of Utah only receives about, 40, 50? 30 nominations for the entire state, right? And so our cadets make up, the majority of all cadets or all students that were accepted in military academies from the state of Utah. And again, nationwide, you'll be hard pressed because we've never been able to do it to find anybody that matches these numbers. So while our goals are high, we continue to push for that, and we continue to hope for even better numbers. This year, we've already received 7 congressional nominations. That's not a guarantee that they'll make it, because again, every other cadet that is competing for a slot in a military academy is competing against someone else from another state or this state that has received a congressional nomination. So you are truly the best of the best.
Can I add one thing to that? One thing to note is that goal of trying to get cadets to academies. I think we've done an excellent job, but as we adapt, one of our strengths has also been we've been able, we average basically 40% of our graduating class has enlisted into to serve their country. And again, we're not there to get cadets in the military. That is not our purpose. However, if a cadet is interested, we're a good place to be to help them and guide them in fulfilling that dream. Several of those cadets that decided to enlist.
Can I ask you a clarifying question?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say 40%
Yes, ma'am.
enlist?
40% of our senior class.
Okay,
A little over 40%.
I'm really confused. How many are in your graduating class then? Maybe I don't have
The first one,
accurate
the first graduating class was 18. The second graduating class was 34, then 38, and then last year was 52.
Well, 52 from Hope.
Yeah. So and then we had 18 at the South Campus last year, so that was their first year.
Okay, I'm showing lower numbers than that enlisted.
Where is that?
That's what you're looking at. We said that 23. Oh, that's this year. Year 5 is this year, right?
Yeah, year 5. So basically, you're looking year 1 through 4. So 10 the first year, 11 the second year, 18 the third year, and 12 last year. And then on top of that, and that was for the North Campus. The South Campus was 4 last year, and the bottom line is several of those cadets could have gotten appointments could have gotten ROTC scholarships. We have one cadet that was in that realm. He just decided, I want to enlist. I'm kind of tired of school, and he's now working on F-15 engines in England. Another cadet who graduated in 2015, again, 32, he had a 32 math score on his ACT, high 20s overall, and he wanted to enlist, and he joined the Marine Corps. And we just got an email from him that he is getting a commander's nomination to go to the Naval Academy. And so, you know, there's lots of courses, lots of ways to get there, but again, through the Utah Military Academy, we gave him that foundation to help him when he was ready for that path was there for him.
Okay, I think that answers my questions at the risk of getting too far down into the weeds. So I think we'll move on at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Bassett. Oh, we've kind of talked about that. Yeah. What? You kind of. Sure. Why don't you just take, we've already done that one too. Yeah, you can go to your next question.
If you could share, what evidence do you have that your families in these districts support the opening of these schools?
So this would be for St. George and Logan. With both of them, we have gone in a little bit tepidly with, we've done some social promotion, social media and such, and we've had a decent amount of success. I've also been cautious in not wanting to go completely overboard to create this big, massive, impression and image. I just wanted to see that there was enough interest that we could have a really good, strong founding group, and we do have that. My overall confidence, I've been in charter schools for quite a while. I've helped open a bunch, and I'm pretty decent at marketing. And when I look at our unique aspect, in a regular charter school setting, and I've helped open in one capacity or another 100 plus, typically the first question that you ask a family is, do they want to go to a charter school? And with our cadets, our students, that's not the question that's asked. We get a lot of families that have no interest in charter schools, but they want to be in our environment. So instead I look at other metrics, and for Logan, we look at the size of Cache County and Logan school districts. They do have some good aviation programs, seem to be on the upswing in like Logan, which I think is awesome. But they don't have any ROTC options whatsoever. And so we look at the model that we have, the grade configuration and such, and I look at those types, and I'm just, I'm confident that when we get to the marketing side of it, that we will open up within the range of the budget. The one that causes, candidly, and I went and met with the superintendent, and I forget his name, Burgess, I think, down in Washington County Schools, really good man, and he brought in his director, I think, of high school education, and I apologize, I forgot his name, and we talked about it very directly. They do have two JROTC programs, one at Dixie High and the other, I believe, at Pineview, and we're all military geeks here. Like, we want to be extremely successful, but we don't want to be to the detriment of any existing military program. When we opened up our first campus, one of the big things that we talked about and we were worried about and we held our breath over is the fact that if you were to look at us and you were to put a thumbtack where our campus is, we're almost, not quite perfectly, but there's a little triangle. It's a pretty good triangle between Clearfield High School and Northridge High School, both of which have Air Force JROTC programs. And so on the marketing front, we wondered out loud, and it was not our intent, but we wondered if we would drain those programs. And Northridge, I believe our first year we probably only had 5 or 6 cadets. Major Workman came from Clearfield, so he brought with him, I don't know, probably 30 cadets or so. But the bulk of the cadets remained, and so that's very relevant to what our expectation in Washington County would be, that when we go in with a very thoughtful marketing plan that is very targeted to those cadets, future cadets that want a military environment, that we will not have really a noticeable impact on those two programs down there. So that would be, I guess I just hang my hat on, I've had a lot of experience in that area.
Thank you. Member Phillips.
I am wondering with which ROTC programs you're planning to affiliate the same or additional ones in your Logan and St. George sites
That's a very controversial question. I'd like to punt that until tomorrow, if that's right. So, well, it's going to be one of the four, right? I think we've all agreed that everybody likes having a Marine in the family, but we're probably not going to do the Marines. So, the dynamic, I would guess. So part of it is our model is elementary school, and ROTC is only 9 through 12, and so we can do any branch of the service for the middle school kids, which is great, and we try and get a diversity of service so everybody gets to see a jarhead and everybody needs to see a little bit of everything. But when we stand up a program, like for the longest time at our Camp Williams campus, even though our charter said Army, they're almost indifferent in many different regards, very interchangeable. Even though our charter said Army, we held out just a general application for military personnel to serve, and almost all of our applications were Army, so we opened up Army. But we were willing to, if all the applications for employment had been Air Force, we would have opened up Air Force. I strongly anticipate that Logan will be Air Force. The Air Force ROTC program at Logan State, sorry about that, Utah State. Anyway, they have a really good program up there. There's a lot of retired Air Force folks up there. St. George seems to be a bigger cross-section of retired individuals. The two programs down there are Air Force, and to be good neighbors, we would definitely lean away from Air Force. But when we got into that part of the decision making, we would just have to look at the resumes. And if it's majority Army, majority Marines, we'd play with the Marines.
So just to clarify, your ROTC program has to affiliate with a branch of the military. Is that what? So you have to decide going in which.
Correct. So upon approval, there are a number of activities that we would instantly launch into to include, the job finding and gather as many military resumes as we could, and that would help our final decision. And then the actual process is you apply simultaneously for an NDCC program, which is a National Defense Cadet Corps. And then the actual ROTC program, and they handle them simultaneously. The Cadet Corps, you'll get approved within a few weeks if you meet the criteria. The actual flag, our first campus did it in 18 months, which was like incredibly fast. And our second campus right now is in the process. I will say there has been one lesson learned, and that is a charter school and as a full-time military academy, we are pretty creative in how we handle things. We'll do crazy things to get the military mission in front of them. And as an example, like ACUs or ABUs, that's the camouflage uniforms, and the Navy calls them NDUBs or something crazy like that. But according to ROTC standards, number one, they're not officially approved gear. You can wear them, and typically they only allow that 1 day a month, but we will wear it 2 or 3 days a week. And so that's an example where we're a lot more flexible than the ROTC programs. And so between the two, official Air Force and official Army, sometimes we've talked about even just going Civil Air Patrol, which would allow us the maximum amount of military flexibility. So long answer, but just a little more details.
And just as a follow-up, going back to your goal of a certain amount of students getting ROTC scholarships that you haven't met so far, do they have to be a part of the JROTC to get an ROTC scholarship?
They do not.
Okay.
They do not. And that, we've got a couple of areas. I know you're going to be talking about our goals and our metrics and such, and there's a couple of areas like this ROTC scholarship, and we've talked about it. We are competitive with the elite private military academies charging $40,000 to $60,000 a year on our service academy nominations, and yet our ROTC scholarships are pretty thin, and we've talked about that.
And that's not nearly as competitive, obviously, as the academy appointments, correct?
Well, it can be. Like Air Force ROTC, there are some people who get into an academy that can't get an Air Force ROTC scholarship. The minimum ACT score for an Air Force ROTC consideration for ROTC scholarship is a 26. The minimum for an Army ROTC scholarship is a 19. The minimum, to be competitive for the Army, for the Navy, your math and English score has to average 49, or be at 49. That makes you competitive. And like I said, those are minimums. It's interesting. Many of our cadets do go into the Army. We could add probably another 10 or so cadets to the scholarship program, but the Army has a program, the Army National Guard and the Army Reserve has a program called SMP. Which allows them to, if they enlist in the Guard, and go, they also have a program called Split Option. So a cadet can go to boot camp between his junior and senior year. So if I want to go in the Army, and matter of fact, several of our cadets that got into academies competed not only as a high school cadet, but as a soldier. And so they looked, they had two options to help them get that path. We have, at the South Campus, we have two that I know of that are going to boot camp this summer in the Army National Guard. At the North Campus, we have two that are going to the Army National Guard. So they'll come back as trained soldiers, and they can compete. But like I said, if you go SMP, you go to a state university, you go to University of Utah, tuition free. And there's other incentives. So we probably have 8 or 10 of our cadets who have gone that route to, because they actually make more money than if they had an ROTC scholarship. Plus they're getting time in service and time of grade. So these are some of the things that we bring to our cadets as far as strategies to help them achieve their goals. Again, not everybody wants to go to an academy. It's a major sacrifice to go to the academy because it's probably one of the best educations you're going to get, but it's tough. And so a lot of our, what other options can I pursue? And like I said, I think we probably have about 10 of these cadets that have enlisted in the Utah National Guard that are going that route for college.
Okay, thank you. Did you get your question answered? Okay. Let's go to Member Smith.
Surprisingly, I'm going to depart from the written question that I'm supposed to ask. You all know I have a son who attends the Camp William campus. I'm familiar with what you're doing. I'm really familiar with the unique nature of your student demographic, which presents some spectacular challenges. So one quick comment is, I think you might consider holding yourself internally to some of these very high goals, but you might consider revising some of the ones that you have on file with us, because the comment is it's really hard for us to justify an expansion or a replication for a school that's not meeting a large percentage of the goals that are outlined in their charter. And some of these you have very good answers for why they aren't met. So if you revise your goals, you could probably think of ways to phrase them that would take into account some of those mitigating factors. So that's just free advice, worth what you paid for it. The real question, though, that I think I've heard from lots of these board members is, and I understand this, due to your probably, in some respects, very difficult population that you work with, and I say that knowing that my own son is one of those extraordinarily challenging students. But your test scores are not great. You're in danger of being in turnaround next year, and both campuses have an F grade. So it's extraordinarily hard for us to justify replicating what I feel is an experience that should be available to every student in Utah. But, how do you stand up and say, yeah, this school's got an F grade, but we think it's worth making more of that?
That's a great question, and I knew you were going to ask that question because it is a relevant conversation. I know parents look at those grades and they, sometimes they choose where to move, where to put their kids because of those school grades. But at the same time, I know that each of us, without making excuses, recognize the deficiencies of the SAGE assessment, which is part of the reason why we're moving to the RISE and the Utah Aspire Plus. And so what we've done is we recognize that our demographics, our students, are not a reflection of the schools around us. We pull from, as far as 30 miles away, and our cadets just don't really fit into the box for us to be able to recognize exactly where they're at and be able to make kind of as quick of gains as we would like to. Part of the reason, anyway, we recognize that deficiency, and that's part of the reason why we brought in the NWEA assessment, which has been around for more than 20 years and has just a really good track record of giving us scores that we can work with. Another reason we went with NWEA was so that we could get, again, at the risk of, I'm not trying to put down the SAGE assessment, but one of the faults of the SAGE assessment is it only gave us a score once a year, right? We could do formative assessments, we can do little things to try and dive into it, but with NWEA, we're able to get a true assessment in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring each year, right? And so we started that last year, and what we found, because this gives us nationwide data, is that our 7th graders are coming to us at a 4th and 5th grade level in math science, or math and reading. Actually, our elementary schools are doing a phenomenal job with science. So our science, our cadets are ahead in science, but definitely way behind in reading and math. And anyway, when we look at the data, and I handed out this paper for everybody. There should be one at least close to you. When you look at the NWEA scores, again, you'll see that our cadets are far behind in 7th grade, but by 11th grade, with the exception only of reading, we're actually ahead nationwide. And so we've had these cadets we're in our 5th year. And, I think just knowing where they start and where we get them nationally, we've made amazing growth that we're able to track. And, with the fall assessment and then having another assessment in the middle of the winter, it gives our teachers a chance to look at growth, to measure that data and make changes so that we don't have to wait until the end of the year to say, okay, we succeeded or we failed, but we can look immediately at any time, and we can give those assessments as much as we would like to, and know exactly where we stand. And so, yes, we've definitely shifted away from SAGE just because we didn't feel like we had enough data, we had enough ability to kind of meet that standard. And so I know it's not really an excuse.
Well, so everyone on this board knows I'm the biggest SAGE hater in the universe. However, we have to justify our decisions to the State Board of Education, and it's extraordinarily challenging to justify replicating an F school or a school that's going to be in turnaround. So that's point A, and what I really need is a 30-second answer that I can give that says, I want to replicate this school because, and really, it needs to be effective in 30 seconds. And the other thing is more of the same free advice. If you're feeling like the NWEA is a better assessment tool and a better, it's just a better tool for getting student results, then you probably ought to revise your goals to reflect that.
Could I give you a shot at the 30-second version? So we fully embrace and understand that our SAGE scores are low. And, there's a lot of opinions and thoughts and all that. The bottom line is we have used the NWEA tool since year 1, but last year is the year that we began to implement it with fidelity, all 3 test cycles. What we have found is that our average 7th grader comes to us about 2 grade levels below. What we've also found is that we took all of our cadets that have been with us for 3 years or more, and we found that on the average they are at grade level. And so we're showing great progress with cadets over time. We also look at the ASVAB test, which is a really good nationally norm reference test, and all of our cadets take it in 10th grade, 11th grade. And what we see is that we are significantly above the national average as well as the state average. And then finally, we have a program, and Rebecca's going to get to see it because we're writing a grant on it. We call it our Exit Point Strategy, and it's a program that we've developed about graduation and such, and it's led by Major Workman. And with that program, we ask, the question to ask our kids is not, do you want to go to college or not? It's, do you want to be an officer and an NCO? And our kids know that if you want to blow stuff up, you don't become an officer, because unless you're a fighter pilot, you're pushing papers, right? And so we discuss relevance. And so that CCR on steroids for a cadet that wants to go to college, our average ACT score is exceptionally high. And for the 2/3 that want to go direct enlistment, the relevant test for them is ASVAB, and we're really confident that that's a very accurate showing of the performance of our cadets.
Thank you. Like I said, I really hope that every student in the state of Utah would have a campus close enough to them to to be able to have the opportunity to attend. And please, please, revise your goals to reflect, how important the ASVAB is to you. We can't judge you on things that we're not tracking, right?
Attachment A, I believe.
Is the ASVAB for any branch of military? It's the acceptance, the vocational
Yes, ma'am.
aptitude. Okay. So any military branch would require this test to enlist?
If you're going to enlist in the United States, so it's not necessarily just for somebody who wants to enlist. It is a vocational aptitude test that anybody in the state of Utah can take, anybody in the nation can take. As a matter of fact, the state of Nevada uses the ASVAB kind of as their SAGE. But it gives you, like, if you score a 2 on mechanical, probably shouldn't be a mechanic. But every branch of the service uses that. Now, they have different standards as to what they take for enlistment and what jobs you can get and that, but every branch of the service uses that for enlisting, not for becoming an officer, but for enlisting in the United States military.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Member Bowles.
You've maybe partially answered this question, but my question is this: as we help you to think about, is this a good time for you to apply to replicate your schools? Your board sat together at one point and said, all right, we're ready to submit a replication application, and these are the reasons why. So will you give me 2 or 3 of those reasons that you said we're successful, and in these 2 or 3 ways we're ready to replicate the schools?
I'm already on. Great. One of the things I discovered when we first put this school together in the Hill Air Force Base campus was the incredible enthusiasm of the cadets. And I give this speech sometimes during the graduations. Either the kids or the parents wanted their kids to come to school there. Sometimes the kids would drag their parents and say, I want to go to school here. And the other times, the parents would drag their kid and say, you're going to school here. I've been around the block a few times. I've seen very few schools where at 7 o'clock in the morning, there are kids standing outside the school trying to get in. And at night, you got to shove them out the door at 8 o'clock because they're so enthusiastic about being in the hood. And I say the hood because that's the sisterhood and the brotherhood that they've attached to our school and our campuses. The kids like to be there. They like to be part of some structured environment. They run the school. We just provide the guidance. And that's incredible for kids that are, 12 through 18 years old. And when they go into the United States military, they're all ready to go in the United States military or as first responders. So it's important that, we have student and parent participation and that they like what they're doing. St. George is one of the fastest growing cities, not only in Utah, but in the nation. If we open a campus up there 2 years from now, it's going to be just like it was when we opened the first campus. We have people waiting in line to get into our school. Every year we have people, depending on the grade, waiting in line to see if they're going to get their kid into the schools. They want their kids to come and have a better chance and a better environment. And that's why they come to our schools. And I have no doubt, I live in St. George, and I know the environment there. And I've been watching construction. I sit on one of the city planning commissions. I know what's going on in Washington County. And I guarantee you, you put another school down there. We talked about this 4 or 5 years ago when we first applied to having 3 campuses, and you told us to come back and see you later, so here we are. But we're ready in St. George, we're ready in Washington County to put another school down there, and I guarantee you, whatever numbers we give you for the first year, if it's 250, we will exceed those numbers because we've already had some focus groups down there. We know, and I've talked to other people who run charter schools down there, and what's being built down there in the way of schools in Washington County, we will have no problem getting students in our school, and we will exceed whatever we ask for the first year. I have no doubt about that. That's my spiel. Sorry.
Can I add one more thing to that? 5 years ago, I sat here, and this board asked me one question. What makes me think that there is interest in doing something like this? Because there is nothing like this in the state of Utah. My answer? I don't know how many of you were here 5 years ago. My answer was, I don't know, but I have a feeling if we build it, they will come. And I think we've proved that.
Member Bassett.
I feel like I'm switching gears a little bit, but I wonder, as governing body members, how have you evaluated the director, and when was the last time he was evaluated?
Do we evaluate you? Yeah. Yes. Every year. That's the only way he gets paid.
And how have you done that evaluation?
In a variety of ways. We look at student enrollment, how we're doing in finances, you know, what our outreach is like in the community, what response we have from the community, you know, how hard he works, how many hours he puts in. You know, there's no such thing as an 8-hour day to this guy. It's more like a 16-hour day. And he's got 2 campuses to run. But his ability to pull in really good people is another way we evaluate him. He and Major Workman are just an incredible team in pulling in people and students and getting the parents to participate. And all of those things go into his evaluation as to whether we want to keep him around any longer. But of course, he'd fire me first, but you know, he's going to stay.
Member Phillips.
Just wanted to make a comment sort of for the record. I think that your schools fulfill a very unique niche, which is one of the missions of this board, to find schools that meet the individual needs of students in our state. And I actually, I don't speak for the board, but I have no doubt that at some point, whether it's today or at another point in the future, you'll replicate in probably more than twice. And as a somewhat independent authorizer, we have both the obligation and the privilege of looking at data other than that which the state might use to grade you or to put you in turnaround and so on. So we have an opportunity to look at these fine growth scores and to consider your efforts to differentiate through those interim assessments. And it's quite impressive that by 11th grade your kids are at grade level or above when they've started behind. We also know, as Member Smith has alluded, that there's at least an element of your student population that's very difficult to work with, and that you whip him into shape, so to speak. No child abuse implied. But in any case, I think that for me as a board member, one of the questions I have, because I do think schools should be judged on where the kids start and where they end up, as opposed to just a simple proficiency line compared to other schools. However, the reasons that we end up, as you know, we look to the long future and try to be both realistic, and sort of optimistic. And the reasons for which we often close schools, governance and finance and enrollment, have not plagued you at all. The concern would be, is this the time when you have enough resource and bandwidth in other ways to maybe amend your goals and some of your charter to more realistically align with what you're actually doing so well? Is it the time to focus on that? Is it the time to expand, essentially doubling what you're doing in terms of, sites and obligations and so on? You have a great track record with certain things, especially the finance and the governance, which is really reassuring. So the one piece that's concerning is just getting that fidelity to your charter and wondering whether or not now is the time to replicate, even if it's an anticipated and even hoped for, and by, I'm assuming, the majority of the members of this board. So I think for me that's what's kind of up in the air, is just whether or not now's the time, if there are some things you need to get in alignment. I have no doubt that you would certainly attract a population, as you suggested, that you have a track record of doing that, and you have a track record of having good, sound finances. So I think that's the question that we might have as a board, as whether just the timing again on it.
Can I comment on that? I appreciate that. Like I said, we're not perfect. It's been a 5-year ride that, again, the good thing is I've seen improvement every year. Personally, I have a passion for what we're doing. You hit it on the head that matter of fact, we came to being because Senator Stevenson saw that charter schools weren't being what they were supposed to be, which is schools that provide a unique population. And, up in Cache Valley, again, there's a large, I was surprised as we found out there's a large military population up there. But they don't have a junior ROTC program, nothing to support. In the next 20 years, this world needs 650,000 pilots. That's one of the new areas that we've gotten into. And this year, we on our South Campus, we've already started cadets getting the chance to fly. In 2 weeks, the cadets on the North Campus that finish the ground school will start to fly. We're working pathways for a kid that wants to be a pilot. Will be, by the time they graduate from college, if they don't go in the military, by the time they graduate from college, they'll have a job with an airline. We are at the North Campus, and we're quickly trying to replicate at the South Campus. We offer 17 different computer classes because the Wasatch Front is the #1 job market in the country for cybersecurity jobs. And we're not meeting that population. We're working right now with General Hawkins at Hill Air Force Base to create internships. I've got working at Hill Air Force Base, working with Northrop Grumman, and working with a local computer company to provide pathways for our cyber kids. And so, right now there's an underserved population in Cache Valley and Washington County. And we're trying to help provide that for those cadets that are looking to fulfill those job requirements in the future.
Can I add one thing really quick? Sorry. As we've moved forward with the marketing, a question I see repeated over and over and over again is this going to be ready next year? Because I'm going to be a senior and I want this so bad, right? And so my feeling is, the longer we take to replicate and to move out there is another year that potential cadets won't have these opportunities.
Thank you. Member Bowles.
So, Director Throckmorton, I'm going to ask this question of you directly.
Yes.
Help us to know how to respond to this question as well. How will you be able to manage your time commitments? You're already operating two campuses, be opening 2 new schools on opposite ends of the state, as well as a different network of schools that are in the bottom 3% in the prior 2 years. So how will you be able to open new schools and help kids succeed, and by more than doubling your workload?
So, great question. And what I did is I prepared a flow chart, and I think that you have this, but if you don't, it has our board of directors, myself, and then what we create is an executive team, and that executive team would address the day-to-day operations of all campuses. Oh,
it was just in our packet.
Okay, I apologize. I can pass this around if you'd like, but and so in this capacity, Major Kit Workman would assume the Commandant of Cadets for all campuses, and then each campus would have an academic director as well as a Commandant of Cadets. And the academic director handles all things academics, parents, those type. And then the Commandant of Cadets handles all things military, athletics, external relationships. And so each campus would have that team. And then Major Workman would oversee the military side of all of that. And then we would have an academic director, Mr. Carroll, would oversee the academics and support and mentor the academic directors for each campus. And in this arrangement, nobody off campus is listening, but on our first campus, we are already mentoring and training the next leader so that Mr. Carroll could assume that responsibility, and it's not a new FTE, so we have a person in training right now. And then Major Workman, when he would step up to oversee the entire organization, that would be one new FTE. And then we have Chief Master Sergeant Kelly Martin serves as a senior military advisor, and she integrates with 7th and 8th grade instruction as well as uniforms, military culture, and she would assume that responsibility for the 4 campuses. We then have SPEDCO, which we have them under contract, and they would continue to provide the leadership and special education services for all campuses, as well as Charter Solutions would handle all of our HR budgets and those types of things. And then our current, we have an executive secretary by the name of Jordan Chandler, who is the registrar, and she handles the registration and that for both campuses, and she would assume those responsibility for all 4. And so we have the entire team in place operating right now and assisting with both campuses. And to scale this up to oversee that, it would require 1 additional FTE, which would be a commandant of cadets at the first campus. And so I would not be doing it by myself at all.
Thank you. Okay, we're a little over scheduled. A little over on our agenda, a little over time. I guess you're the one who's over scheduled. Thank you for coming back and asking for this. And I just want to say I was here 5 years ago when we approved you and said come back and tell us what you're doing. And you're doing some great things. And I have some ties to the military, and I love what you're doing with the military and with your students. One of the vision of our board is to have every student has access to an excellent education. And so I think, my hesitation on replicating is your academics. That's where we are not seeing scores that we hope to see. We're not seeing achievement that we're hoping to see. It's the academics. If you don't get replicated, I will say that it's your academics that need focus. And if we can get those up, then replication is obviously going to be a possibility. But at this point, I couldn't support replication when your academics are where they are. And I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing for your students. But our vision is that kids have access to an excellent education. We can argue scores of tests all day long, but for what we have and what we have to assess you with, they're not where we'd like to see them.
Can I ask a clarification question?
Sure.
Besides SAGE scores, where do you see our academics as failing?
School grade, ACT, even on the NWEA, you're above the national average in 1 or 2 areas and below in another. So I would say all of the academics are disappointing.
I would
love what you're doing in a lot of other ways is wonderful. I do want to say that. We're excited with what you're doing. And you definitely serve a population that needs to be served. But at the same time, we do need to look at the academics. That's, it is what we're here for.
I would say that we need to be very careful to note that growth is important to us. And often where their scores are not where we would hope them to be overall, growth is extraordinary. And so I find great hope in that.
Where are you showing that?
In the NWEA.
Let me just make a comment. Not only do you have significant growth, but it demonstrates how many of the students are meeting their targeted growth scores over the course of a year as per an adaptable MAP assessment. So that is, I think, a very impressive growth record.
I noticed on the ACT scores, and maybe you can speak to this real quickly, in 2015, you had 58.5% of your students with an 18-plus composite score. That number dropped significantly in 2016 and is still not risen. It has gone up a little bit each year, but it's still not gotten back to that 2015 58.5% of your students scoring an 18 plus. So that.
Yeah. Actually, I do have a question about that as well. Yeah, the first year was a small sample size. We started with a very small population of students. So that is actually an outlier. But then the other years, with that, and I'm being completely, I mean, this is a serious question. Do other schools in the state of Utah require all juniors to take the ACT?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. I mean, we do the same. And to answer that, kind of what Major Workman mentioned before, a lot of students come to us specifically because of their desire to go into the military, and they take the ASVAB, which is the test that they need to get into the military and to be successful in the career that they choose. And so those students that have that pathway, they take the ASVAB actually in November. And so by the time they take the ACT in February, they already know whether or not they've made it into the military to do exactly what they want to do. And so if they don't have college aspirations, they don't try. And we still make them do it, and I walk around and try and wake kids up, and so at the same time, we just have a large population of kids that aren't interested in college. Those that are show, phenomenal ACT scores, but on average, it does bring us down.
Do you teach to the ASVAB? I mean, is that one of your focuses?
We do both. Right now, we have an ACT ASVAB prep class for our juniors. So they actually train for the ASVAB until November. They take the ASVAB, and then they train for the ACT until February. And then they work on college or military applications.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Tonks.
Yes, and I would echo some of the comments by Chair Lenkowski that you're doing really good things with your cadets and the military focus that you have and providing for the innovation, and that's part of one of the values that we have for our vision and our mission. It's a little bit difficult, and one of the reasons why we don't typically like getting materials handed to us as we're sitting here in the meeting. These are unaudited scores. We don't have anything to compare them to. What we really have to go off of is comparative scores from students across the state, which are generated. We can agree to disagree or argue all day long about the veracity and the viability of SAGE scores. We could literally do that all day long, and I would join you in the fray in that discussion. Those are the tools that we've been given. That's what we've been tasked with. And we also have to take into consideration not just your specific school, but we represent the entire charter movement. We have multiple schools coming to us and requesting replications, and it's kind of our job, not kind of, it is our job to take that into consideration on how that reflects on the entire charter movement. And if we replicate an F school, if in this case, what does that do for all of the other schools, and what kind of a precedent does that set? And former Representative Newbold knows what that looks like, and former Representative Oda knows what that looks like. When you set a precedent, then for us, what that looks like is every other school that comes in says, well, you did that for Utah Military, why aren't you allowing us to do that? So we have multiple considerations that truly don't have anything to do with Utah Military Academy, and you've made strong arguments for why we could look at you and say, oh my gosh, look at their NWEA scores. Look at their growth. Look at all of these strong arguments that they've made we should replicate. But there are considerations outside of the scope of your school that we have to take a look at for the entire charter movement as a whole that I want you to be aware of. And a lot of this is conversation that we'll have tomorrow. We're getting a little cart before the horse here, but since we're already here, I'll make my point as well. That's kind of where I'm leaning with this. I never ever want a school to walk away not knowing why I made the decision that I made. I will always give you my justification for why I voted the way I voted, and that's kind of where I'm leaning at this point, that we have other considerations. I have other considerations that I have to take a look at, so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, Member Phillips.
Just to make sure we end on a very positive note, I wanted to give you a shout out for your high graduation rates. Those are exceptional. And that's another piece of data that ought not to be overlooked in the overall conversation, along with some of your growth scores.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, and thank you for what you're doing for students. Okay, we have 10 minutes for Beehive. I'm just kidding. Hopefully no one... Welcome. I'm sorry we are behind schedule. Thanks for waiting and being patient. And now we will send you home in rush hour traffic, and we apologize. Next on the agenda, Beehive Science and Technology Academy, their satellite application capacity interview. And we will let you go ahead and do what the other schools have done, introduce yourselves, and then if you have a short introduction, we'd like to hear it, and then we have some questions for you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kelvin Zulich, and I have been in higher education for 20 years and part of the Beehive Science and Technology Academy board since 2013. Currently, I serve as a board president and have seen tremendous growth and positive impact that Beehive has made on Beehive students throughout the years. Need for more STEM education in Utah. Utah students needed STEM. That was the headline of an article written in Silicon Slopes that appeared in the Utah Business Magazine online on December 10, 2018. This article noted that today there are nearly 5,000 open computing jobs in Utah, jobs with an average salary of over $81,000 and nearly double the state average salary. But there are not enough qualified workers in Utah to fill many of these positions. The article went on to state this workforce gap is the result of an educational infrastructure that hasn't always kept pace with Utah's and country's rapidly evolving workforce demand.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be respectful for everyone's time here, so do a quick introduction. My name is Sudha Kargi, and I work in Science Bank Corporation as a vice president in their finance department. And my affiliation with Beehive Science and Technology goes back to 2013. When I heard some great things about the school through my friends, I went and visited and decided to enroll both my daughters in the school, in their middle school. Today they are in high school. One of them is senior, other one is in junior. So they are not only getting ready for their college, but also for the career. This is primarily because of the school's wonderful programs they've had, to name a few: college mentorship and leadership program, and their technical and career education, and also some of their unique programs like summer internship, in which many students gets qualified and they have an opportunity to apply their theoretical knowledge into the practical work environment. And I serve in the board, started serving in the board since 2015 as a treasurer in the finance committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I was just thinking to myself, you guys are harder than any planning commission I've ever been to, by the way.
Very nicely very nicely done. My name's Chris McCandless. I'm a member of the board for the last couple of years, and I was specifically asked to serve on this board for my experience as a city councilman in Sandy City. I understand the difficulties associated with getting things done in entitlements. So should you approve of this expansion, then I will be the guy to help them navigate some of those roles. The other side of my job, I'll call it, is that I own a company called CW Management Corporation. We're a real estate development company where me and my business partner, Wayne Niederhauser, have developed properties in the state of Utah since longer than I can remember. I know it was early 1980s. And so this will be a fairly not easy task, but one that I think we can bring a value to. For myself, I think I represent all the students, all the teachers, all the parents, because they are my constituents. One of the things I did when I first took office in 2005 was make a commitment to never develop property within the jurisdictional boundaries of Sandy City for a fee. I do it as a representative of the people, and I feel like I represent them all. And so I'm going to do my best to make sure that they get the best value and the best product for the money that they'll be investing, which will educate these students, and they do an amazing job. Last night we gave them at our city council meeting not only the Educator of the Year award, but we also gave Mr. Oguz the Administrator of the Year award from our city. It was pretty exciting to see these guys and their hard work pay dividends personally to them.
Congratulations. Yes. Vice Chair Tonks wants to just make a comment real quickly.
So I just want to disclose that in my day job as the principal of Mountain Heights Academy, my building, my school is located in a building that is owned by CW Management Corporation, and disclose that as a potential conflict of interest and ensure that the body is comfortable with me continuing in my capacity.
And we wish we had more tenants like you.
Well, because we continue to grow and knock down walls and expand, yes.
Thank you.
We'll negotiate that at a later time.
I think it's fine for you to be here. Yeah, I think it's fine. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Tarek Kanay, and I am a principal software engineer at Motorola Solutions, a public safety company. And I'm the most recent member of this board since the middle of 2018. And my wife used to work for BSTA before we got our newborn, and she left and I became a board member of the school. And she used to be a computer science teacher, and I'm a programmer, so I had the chance to see what she taught closely in the school. And what I realized is that most of the things that she taught was actually what we use in the field. So I became a board member and would like to contribute my knowledge over the years, I acquired over the years to the school. And I would like to give a brief information about the diverse student body and the board. And we'll reiterate a couple of numbers that you already have in front of you. In 2017 and 18, Beehive's student body included 38% minority students, and that's a good number, and 14% students with disabilities, and 38% economically disadvantaged students, and 2.9% English language learners, and it has more than 25 languages spoken in that body. And the majority of the Beehive students reside within the boundaries of the Canyons and Jordan school districts. And Beehive students now currently travel between 3 to 5 miles to attend the charter school. So allow me to give a brief information about our diverse board members from different backgrounds. Beehive's board also reflects the school's ongoing efforts to encourage diversity. Current board members include a director of IT, director of technology, an architect, a banker, a real estate developer / Sandy City Council member, and a software engineer and security expert. So we know that the diverse experience and knowledge in our board, we can move the school to a much greater level. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and start asking questions. Or did you want to say something?
Oh, just real quick. My name is Roland Lee. I'm happy to be here. I've been a board member over 9 years now. Started with Beehive actually what brought me to Beehive was my son. He was in the public school in 7th grade, and honestly, he had some challenges, and the school system was really broken. So Beehive had a very specialized schooling relative to science and technology, which really piqued his interest. Brought him there. Class sizes were smaller. When we started, in 2011, 2012, we had 140 students. Now we have over 300. And just as a note, 2012, we had 30% graduating. 2015, we had 90%. And then compared to the state average of 85%, March of 2017, this board recognized Beehive for achieving 100% graduation in 2015 and 2016. And from just a personal note, my son was failing miserably in the school system. When we brought him to Beehive, his level of success just accelerated. He's now gone on to graduate from Beehive. He's gone on an LDS mission. He's now gotten married, and he's going to college. So what an incredible success story. And if it wasn't for the opportunity for him to go to Beehive, he would have never been where he's at today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, we have a few questions we'd like to ask. We'll start with your question, Member Phillips.
As you contemplated this satellite and sort of extension into these grades, what were the challenges that you anticipated, but also the advantages or excitement that initiated your request today?
Can I just real quick, one of the things that we saw was a challenge of 4th and 5th and 6th graders, where we actually would get these 6th graders that from a science, math, English, they were just far under par. And so that's the reason why we came and originally asked for 5th and 6th grade. We now have 6th grade. You approved it, and finding great success with that 6th grade. So it's really to get these kids earlier so that we can really help them to have the skills and the knowledge that they need. Just be successful in the later grades.
Can I add to that? Beehive has tried to expand to do lower grades over the years, and we appeared in front of you, I think 4 years back, to ask that, and you kind of gave us 6 at that time and asked us to kind of work further and come back for that. So we tried last year, but we felt like this is the right time to come in front of you with kind of better track records and everything. So I feel like over the years we have explored that thought, because we feel like, as he explained, in 6th and 7th grade, students come to us because of the demographics and the type of students we get. I mean, their achievement levels are usually low, and with our programs, they usually pick up within 2-3 years and excel in that. But it's really in best interest for those type of students to go further down so that we can kind of close that gap early enough to help them better.
Thank you. Member Bowles.
Thank you. Help us to understand the answer to this question, because we know that many charter schools suffer financially when they have to pay for a new facility. And so you're planning a new building. How will you handle the changes in the facility costs while assuring the same amount of money still flows through to the classroom to do the academic work that you'd like to do?
So if I can help answer that a little bit, I've made my living in real estate development, and I'm a politician, so I had 2 strikes against me. But I've taken a look at their financial statements and what I think that this organization can do, and I think we can, and obviously it's going to have an additional burden, financial burden, but having dealt with numerous governmental entity budgets, I feel very comfortable in their capacity to be able to do the expansion and have a new facility or an existing facility retrofitted to meet their needs without any complications. It'll be a lot of work for me, and the paycheck will be great, I'm sure. So I'm just kidding on the paycheck.
Adding on to what Mr. Candace has said, as you can see our balance sheet, we are looking really good when it comes to our capability of managing the cash. And over the period serving in the board as a treasurer, I monitor their performance, how they are doing, and we've been successfully coming along the ways and the budget, how we plan, very stringent, and make sure that we meet our goals without compromising anything on the quality, at the same time have enough cash to expand it. So that's where we are heading towards. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Tonks. Okay. Actually, I'm going to ask a question. What do you think will be the major policy decisions that you will make next year regarding operating as a K through 12? It's going to be a lot different than what you're used to. How are you going to do that? You know, what policy decisions you're going to make for that operational year?
Let me try to answer part of that. First of all, as a charter school, this is our satellite application, so our mission and vision is same, and type of students and demographics we are expecting same, and locality we are going to be in the same locality. So we are not expecting like a big change in this sense, like the type of students we have, but definitely there will be elementary students, so we'll have to look into our safety policies. We'll have to look into our like other student-related handbook policies and lots of student conduct policies, so that we can kind of like better handle and address the needs of the elementary students. But at the same time, most of our general policies will be the same, because we expect them to be applicable to all settings that with similar our mission and vision. But at the same time, we'll have to like adjust some of those policies to better meet the needs of those students. Yeah.
Thank you. Vice Chair Tonks.
Okay, tell me how you identified the specifics of what you think is making your school successful. Like, what's your secret sauce, your special recipe, and how are you going to replicate that down into the K through 5 grades?
You looked at me, so I should answer that.
I will look at everybody, and you can choose who can answer.
So, definitely, first is the shared vision of our school and how everyone is on board with that. That's really the key source, because everyone, starting from paraeducators to like all the board members level, everyone believes in that mission and the vision of the school, and they really bring their best into that. As well as we have a special focus, like we do STEM focus activities, which even in our art and music programs, they really have those specific skills instilled in their curriculums. And looking at that, we are like really kind of a focus group of like educators that really know what to do, how to do. And over the years, we have been very innovative in the way like we want to try some new methods and teaching strategies. And I am sure you know, as you mentioned earlier, that you are fond of the Hadith studies, and we really applied many of those strategies in a very fidelity way, because in our school, evidence-based instruction strategies are school-wide, and all of our teachers are really using those strategies, and we get extensive training and coaching and mentoring on those. We are part of the State Assessment Achievement Program. The first cohort, actually, we were one of the first schools to be going through that program. So professional learning communities are key in being able to like bringing those new techniques and implementing them with fidelity, and being able to using data to look into how we are doing and being able to sustain that. And I would say professional learning communities, we are extremely doing well, and I'm extremely happy personally on that, because I feel like we have been like trying lots of ways to handle that, and now we brought to the grassroots level, to the teacher level, that without our administrations like much directing, now teacher level, it's all like being driven. So we have school transformation teams in place that most of them are teachers, and they come together and really reflect on the school, how they are doing academically, how students are learning, and utilizing data to be able to like assess those, and even training other teachers. Like last 2 years, we have not invited much like outsiders to be able to come and train our teachers. Our teachers are training themselves. And this model has worked so much that many charter schools have approached us to come to be able to like see how we are doing that and really kind of like interact with our teachers. Actually, this week itself, we hosted another charter schools to come and observe some of our classes and interact with our teachers. So key is definitely evidence-based instructional strategies, data, as well as using like technology and tools that to be able to like utilize those STEM skills, and also empowering our teachers to be able to like drive those with the flexibility, drive those decisions and be able to like implement those.
Can I add a couple things to that? So I don't think that there's a secret recipe to this. What I believe is that you constantly evaluate yourself, and then you retrospectively analyze what went wrong and what went better, and then you fix those things. So I think it's just hard work in our school that we've been doing so far. So.
Can I just add one just real quick comment? I think, you know, the important special sauce for me was the size of classes and the teacher ratio to student. My son succeeded because of that, and we've talked about that as a board. As we grow, you know, this is obviously going to be a bigger campus. So as an architect and dealing with a lot of different schools, there are ways physically we can actually design the school to promote that smaller interaction, and that's what we want to preserve. We do not want to lose that, because that's the beauty of these charter schools. I mean, we will maintain that.
Can I add a few more things to that? You can see how passionate we all are in this. Being a parent, I have two students in the high school, right? I was mentioning about the college mentoring and the leadership program. The staff members take out of their personal time. After school hours, they meet with the students to coach them for their ACT and SAT prep work. Not only that, they track their individual goals and objectives and make sure that on an annual basis they achieve their targets. So it comes, you know, like the Beehive is a community and it's a culture. Once you walk into the campus, you would realize that, you know, everyone is so positive and it comes from the heart for them to serve. I think that's the secret sauce. It's the culture, it's around the Beehive. Thank you.
And the results of that secret sauce are numerous awards that we have received on the state and national level.
The proof is in the pudding.
Thank you. Member Smith, would you like to ask a question?
I'd like to add one sentence to that.
Oh, sorry about that. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, actually she mentioned about college mentorship and leadership program. We try to really coach our high school. Size-wise, we are a small high school population, but I will say like out of 100, around 40 high school students, almost 30 students got the national U.S. Congressional Award Certificate and medals, which is really unique. I don't think any kind of like school in the nation will have those many like percentage-wise U.S. Congressional certificates in their school.
Thank you so much. Member Smith. Whichever one you would like to ask. Why don't you ask whichever one is more important to you?
I'm sorry. I actually am really interested to know, and perhaps you addressed it while I was out, but a K-5 population is really different from, okay, you addressed that one. Great, okay. Then let's just talk for a minute about finances. Pretend it's this time next year and the land in the area identified in your market analysis no longer fits your budget. In fact, it is significantly over budget and you're behind schedule. How would you handle this?
So I think that's why they brought me on the board. I have been in the real estate, sales, development, leasing, management business with my business partner. I think you stepped out of the room for a minute and we talked about this a little bit, so a little bit redundant, with CW Management Corporation since 1977. We own buildings, we've done condominium projects. Project we're working on right now is at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon. Hotel, office building, restaurants, and a big parking structure. We've done residential to every aspect of residential and real estate development, I think, imaginable since that time. So my job is to try and figure out exactly how to use the existing finances that they have and make sure we come on in time and on budget. And that's one of the things we're known for. We're pretty cheap. Now our office is primarily politicians with a side business called real estate development. I'm an elected official, I get it, I understand what it takes to make sure that we don't violate any rules and that no requests are made from the municipality that I represent as a city councilman, that they don't try and stick us with things that don't, that shouldn't be in their budgetary process. So I've looked at their financial statements and what they have to work with. I feel very comfortable with what we're dealing with and how we can make this work. And it might end up being, quite frankly, to answer your question, an existing structure, because I think it's more cost effective to do that. There's an awful lot of really nice boxes out there that are empty today because the retail market's changing. And that might be the direction we go, but we don't know. And so the objective is to get your approval and then move forward. We don't want to get too far out ahead of you guys, because if we do, that might be offensive to you on that end as well. So we'll wait till you say okay, and then we'll go to work, and then I'll do my job.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
And valid point. Thank you.
Can I add to that also, please? And we have initiated the process last year without any commitment or any decision taking, but already we have been out and looking out some sort of options and things, but definitely we wanted to wait till we get an official approval before committing or doing anything. So just wanted to know that some things has happened already.
Thank you. Member Bowles.
We've talked about expanding the school somewhat. You're working with high school kids who are a unique group as they're looking forward to their future. Middle school kids are free entertainment every day, and little kids need a lot of nurturing, and they have a different set of needs. But you're expanding really quickly from a successful model to a much larger number, a bigger community. So how are you thinking about gearing up? How are you going to do that, to maintain the culture and consider the unique needs of these younger ones and be able to establish that culture and with new teachers and all the things that go with it in such a quick time?
As we mentioned before, our focus and mission and vision is going to be same. But of course, you are right. There will be more students and elementary setup, and with the many elementary students coming into the picture, how to preserve, maintain, and even have a better culture that we have right now. In my comment before, I mentioned that really we wanted to make it grassroots level, to the teacher level. That's the key. We believe that if everyone in the building that they believe in that shared mission and vision, they are going to bring their best into the table, and which we have really tested so far. Last year, one of my administrative goal was to be able to pull myself a little back and see how, without me so much interfering, how it's going to happen, how the direction is going to be. And I feel I can share that with you that it really happened better even. The reason was because last 4 years we have been setting up those teams, training and coaching them so well that they have really excelled, and now they are able to bring that teacher level leadership into the table that they can really drive those. So I feel that created an excellent culture in the school, which really is reflecting on many achievements and things, but at the same time, to be able to reflect that onto the elementary as well, will be, at least we know how this has come. We'll just use this common shared experience and background to be able to try to instill the same thing in the elementary level as well. Because elementary, you are right, there will be a site director, elementary background and experienced person, as well as with our shared mission and vision that we can translate into there, we'll be able to help with our current structure. We already are helping some other schools, as I mentioned. We'll be able to really do a better job trying to bring this same culture into the elementary section as well, because we know what expectations are, we know what worked with us, and we know with our model how it's working. So I think it will definitely be a challenging one, but at the same time, it's not we are ground zero. We'll be able to translate some of what we are doing into the elementary and try to translate that culture into there as well.
I can add more to that. Like Mr. Ogu said, we thought about it last year, and we decided to, present it this year and come in front of you because we feel even more confident. And we've been working on this for quite some time. We thought about the challenges when we expand, from K to 5, what are the challenges, in the younger population that we are going to be getting? Pretty much all of the parents and the community we have built in is through the word of mouth. today we see what a better way to mold a kid at an young age than coming to the middle school. If we can start molding them at an young age with the culture we have here, why can't we do it, expand it, like with some proper planning? We have a great team, and Mr. Ogus has wonderful experience in working with the kindergarten to 5th grade in his previous experience, leveraging of his strengths and the board members' commitment, and then the parents' involvement and the teachers' involvement. We are confident that we could meet those challenges.
Thank you. Vice Chair Tonks.
So I just have a couple of questions. What is your physical space building capacity, right? I'm not going to look at you because you got after me last time. I'm not sure where to look. What is your physical space, your building capacity, the number of students that your building can hold right now? Somebody still has to answer the question regardless of where I look.
I'll start, and if you like to add, please. Our current facilities are at its capacity right now, and we have around 300 to 310, like changing number, but around 310. And we can kind of stretch up to 330, but I don't think we can put more than that. And that's because of, various different programs and electives that we offer. And, the size of 300 students, we have 3 CTE pathway programs, we have 5 AP programs, and we have 3 concurrent enrollment programs, just like, advanced courses that we have. So because of all these programs, and various electives and engineering programs and technology programs that we have, it's really, we are at capacity number-wise, I could say.
So that's what I was getting at. You're approved for 450 students, but you're constrained by your physical space, and you're capped physically at your capacities. Am I understanding that correctly? So you're looking for new space, but you are, I just want to make sure I understand correctly, because to Member Bowles' question, going from 300 and, let's just give you a few extra, you're going to go from 325 students to 800 in 1 year.
Yes.
You're diluting your culture from 325 to more than double, with a lot of little tiny kids with warm fuzzy needs, and you're a STEM school. So I'm just going to draw the comparison. I'm just going to say it. That's a big cultural shift. So I think his point is very well taken. Now I will also say this. You have been very, very gracious and taken direction incredibly well over the years. Any direction that you've been given, even prior to me being on the board, I've followed your story. You kind of have a really great Cinderella story. You've taken that direction incredibly well. And so I'm feeling very free to give you additional direction. That's a really big leap, and to just be very cognizant with your directionality and in adding that many students, that does something to your culture that you're going to want to be very, very careful with and very aware of.
I appreciate that, and I definitely agree with you that it's going to be a big challenge, but at the same time, we have been working over the years, and we feel like we are ready to take that challenge, but it's not going to be easy, we know that, right?
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You have 7 minutes.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Yeah, it's a separate meeting tomorrow. But